Chapter 646. The Huangfu ancestor was actually someone who could endure patiently. In the pugilistic world, those who reached the third level of spirit condensation were basically big shots who stood at the pinnacle. Those who reached the martial true core realm were known as masters, and they were the experts who had appeared in front of the pugilistic world for the longest time. Those who reached the heaven and earth illumination realm could be counted on one's fingers, and almost all of them were top figures on the sovereign ranking. Most of them didn't often appear in the pugilistic world, so those at the true fire spirit refinement realm could definitely stir up a storm. However, the Huangfu ancestor had clearly reached this realm, and he wasn't at the brink of death from old age. Yet, he still chose to cultivate in seclusion in the Huangfu clan for more than a decade. It wasn't because he was afraid of death, but because he wanted to use the last of his time to escort the Huangfu clan to its final journey. Although the Huangfu clan still had a true fire spirit refinement realm expert like him, the next generation was mediocre, and there weren't many outstanding figures in the younger generation. Therefore, for the sake of the Huangfu clan, he could only choose to stay in the clan and protect it during this period of decline. However, keeping a low profile and enduring patiently didn't mean that the Huangfu ancestor was a weakling. How could a junior like Xiang Wu act so arrogantly in front of him and even take the initiative to attack him? How could the Huangfu ancestor tolerate that? In that instant, he drew a pitch-black coiling dragon spear from the black dragon carriage and held it in his hand. It was a simple thrust, but it caused the dark clouds in the sky to gather and form a huge cyclone. With a dragon's roar, it came crashing down at the Huangfu ancestor. The eyes of the dragon head on the coiling dragon spear flickered with scarlet killing intent as if it was alive. The coiling dragon spear in Xiang Wu's hand was also a divine weapon. The Huangfu ancestor raised his head abruptly as divine light gathered in his eyes. Wherever it passed, all the astral energy dissipated, and even the phenomenon formed by Xiang Wu's spear collapsed. However, Xiang Wu's spear still bore the powerful force and pierced straight towards Ancestor Huangfu's chest. Wherever it passed, the earth would crack and sonic booms would ring out. It was an extremely ferocious attack. Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He reached out his hand and grabbed Xiang Wu's spear in the nick of time. Golden stellar energy erupted as his other hand slammed into the spear, sending Xiang Wu flying. His feet landed on the ground, creating a crater that was several tens of feet wide. Xiang Wu laughed heartily. Is this the Huangfu clan's secret technique, Spirit Annihilation Eyes? A secret technique that can annihilate all astral energy and origin energy. Interesting, it's much stronger than the Ice Soul Divine Eye of the extreme north Snowdrift City. Even though Xiang Wu had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in just a single exchange, one mustn't forget that there was an entire realm of difference between the two of them. The strength that Xiang Wu had revealed now was sufficiently shocking. Xiang Wu laughed heartily as he continued to charge forward with his spear in hand. For someone like him who was usually incomparably lazy, this was the only time he could be truly excited. Previously, they thought that Chu Xiu could only choose to defend himself in the Guanzhong torture room. They didn't expect him to be so bold and take the initiative to attack. Previously, they had thought that in such a situation, Chu Xiu could only choose to think of a countermeasure in the Guanzhong disciplinary hall. They had not expected him to be so daring and dare to take the initiative to attack. Therefore, the forces that noticed the commotion were waiting for the result from the morgue. If Chu Xiu won, they would pretend that they knew nothing and ignore the demon-killing alliance. If Chu Xiu won at the morgue village, they would act as if they didn't know anything. They wouldn't have anything to do with the demon-killing alliance. Therefore, everything depended on the result of the battle at the morgue. Of course, it also depended on whether Wei Shuya and the others could stop the other forces. But if the morgue won, they could take the opportunity to attack the Guanzhong torture room and gain some fame and benefits. If they couldn't stop them and the others came to help Nie Rinlong, Chu Xiu would be in danger. At this moment in the morgue, after Nie Rinlong learned that the northern drifting snow city and the other forces were stopped by Chu Xiu, he coldly said, "If they don't come, then they won't come. Even without those people, they would at most let some of the Devil Path's remnants escape. But you, Chu Xiu, don't think of leaving the morgue alive. Also, that's all you have. Eastern Qi may be a little slow, but it won't be long before they make their move. The Guanzhong torture room that you've been trying to protect will be destroyed. If you hide underground like a rat, I won't be able to kill you in a short time. But you're unwilling to let go of the Guanzhong torture room and came to me. You're courting death. Chu Xiu, your 7 demons saber can trigger a person's 7 emotions and 6 desires. Have you ever thought that one day you will die because of your greed? Greed? If people weren't greedy, the world would have been at peace a long time ago. But if you want me to die here, I'm afraid you're thinking too much. The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand was surging with fiery demonic qi. The demonic qi that the formation emitted was absorbed by the heavenly demon dance and condensed into a demonic shadow that floated behind Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was not a martial Dao grandmaster yet, his strength was comparable to a martial Dao grandmaster's. At least in terms of the use of strength, most martial Dao grandmasters were no match for Chu Xiu. In fact, Nie Renlong was right about one thing. Chu Xiu was indeed greedy. This time, if he gave up the Guanzhong torture room and went to some secret places of the Yinma clan to hide for a period of time, it would only be a few years. After all, people in Jianghu were forgetful. After a few years, even if there were still people who wanted to make trouble for him, they would not be able to form an alliance of this scale. But as Nie Renlong said, Chu Xiu couldn't let go of the Guanzhong torture room. He had spent a lot of effort to get it. If his identity had not been exposed and Divine Lord Luo had not taken action, Chu Xiu was even confident that he could completely take over the Guanzhong torture room as long as he was given more time. The greed in Chu Xiu's heart was indeed strong. To be precise, Chu Xiu was not greedy. He just felt insecure and wanted to continue to climb up. With Chu Xiu's current status and strength, as long as he was willing to leave the Yinma clan, he could live a comfortable life whether he went to the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. There was no need for him to live such a dangerous and hard life. Such a choice was not because of how loyal Chu Xiu was to the Yinma clan, nor was it because he was a masochist. It was just that Chu Xiu wanted more things which he could not get by joining the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. In fact, many people had this kind of mentality, including those famous martial Dao grandmasters and the northern Yan emperor like Xianglong. They would more or less have this kind of feeling. Those martial Dao grandmasters were already standing at the top of Jianghu. Their cultivation and strength surpassed 99% of martial artists in Jianghu. Why did they still cultivate in seclusion and pursue greater power? It was because they felt insecure. Although they were strong enough, when they looked up they could still see the powerhouses at the top. Those who could cultivate to the martial Dao grandmaster realm were not mediocre. They did not want to be stepped on by others for the rest of their lives while they could only look up. Even the world's #1 heavenly lord of the Mahasvara, Zhong Xinxiu, might be looking up at the realm that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had reached in the past. Nie Renlong did not understand Chu Xiu's state of mind. He thought that Chu Xiu was very greedy, but in fact Chu Xiu's greed was more than he imagined. The heavenly demon dance slashed down, and boundless demonic qi erupted. Wherever this blade passed, endless heaven and earth's essence qi was devoured. Nie Renlong's heaven and earth cloud hand stirred the world, but the power was still devoured by Chu Xiu's blade. This was the power of the greedy blade. He often used the 7 demon blades. In addition to the hatred blade, Chu Xiu even slowly comprehended the true meaning of the greedy blade. The 7 demon blades were essentially the extreme evolution of human emotions. As long as Chu Xiu could completely control these emotions, even if Chu Xiu did not have the 7 demon blades, or even if he did not have a blade, he could still control the power of these emotions. The greedy blade devoured everything, even as if it wanted to devour the heavens and the earth. This greed did not belong to Nie Renlong but to Chu Xiu. Greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil, and desire were the demons of the heart, but they were also the source of power. Nie Renlong roared and tore forward with one hand. The yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed, and 2 completely different forces constantly twisted. One was the purest astral energy in the world, and the other was the evil demonic qi in the surroundings. As the 2 forces intertwined, they enveloped Chu Xiu's blade. As the astral energy exploded, Chu Xiu's figure was blasted backward. Even the greedy blade could not devour this powerful force for a while. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful devouring force came from behind Nie Renlong. A middle-aged martial artist dressed in black stood behind him. From his mouth, a 2-horned evil hungry ghost broke free. It roared and rushed towards Nie Renlong to devour him. Wherever it passed, even the heaven and earth essence energy was devoured. This thing was Chu Xiu's hungry ghost realm incarnation. In fact, Chu Xiu had already placed the hungry ghost realm incarnation here. However, he did not control the human puppet to attack it. After all, the human puppet was just an inanimate object. When it did not move, it would not reveal its aura. Therefore, Nie Renlong had thought that it was just an ordinary demonic martial artist. But when the hungry ghost realm incarnation moved, Nie Renlong finally realized that there was such a great evil hidden here. He was actually so close to it. Nie Renlong no longer cared about attacking Chu Xiu. He stepped forward, and although his steps seemed chaotic, they seemed to form a strange array. At the same time he formed a seal with both hands, and the yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed. The heaven and earth essence energy within a radius of more than 10 feet seemed to be divided, like a cage, trapping the hungry ghost realm incarnation within. But at this moment Chu Xiu, who had already escaped, formed a colorless sealing palm seal and slammed it down on Yerin Long. Summer mustard seed, reverse heaven and earth. Chapter 647. Realm and combat power were not absolute. Just like the current Chu Xiu, he no longer put ordinary martial arts grandmaster in his eyes. Even in the face of Yerin Long, who was on the martial arts ranking list, he dared to take the initiative to counterattack. The hungry ghost Taoist incarnation devoured everything, and Chu Xiu's powerful colorless stop grand handprint fell in front of him. The offensive and defensive momentum had been reversed in an instant. Yerin Long roared, and powerful Gang Qi burst out from his body, drawing in the power of heaven and earth. As he waved his hands, yin and yang reversed, and two completely different powers converged into a storm that swept out, with a hint of blood in it. The boundless storm swept Yerin Long into it, and it even devoured the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation. In the end, even Chu Xiu was involved in the storm. He could only resist the power of the storm with the colorless stop grand handprint. Yerin Long's martial arts inheritance was actually not powerful. His martial arts were very mixed. After reaching the martial arts grandmaster realm, he combined these martial arts with his own martial arts understanding and finally condensed them into this heaven and earth cloud hand. This martial arts technique, or a kind of martial arts, was actually not eye-catching at a low level, but at this time in Yerin Long's hands, this martial arts technique almost exerted the power of the real pellet state to the extreme, using 1% of strength to stir the heaven and earth. Such borrowing power was considered to be in line with Yerin Long's own style. In the storm, the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation was constantly devouring the power. It could hold on, but the human puppet couldn't. The human puppet had been refined by Gongshu Yuan using in Liuyan's body. It was unknown whether or not it would have been able to defeat Yerin Long when it was alive. Now that it was dead, its body would naturally not be able to withstand the impact. This thing was not easy to get. Chu Xiu still wanted to use it a few more times, so he could only let it retreat and withdraw from the storm for the time being. Clenching his hands, the storm burst, and the aura scattered in all directions. Yerin Long stood in place with a slightly pale face. He couldn't control this level of power for too long. However, just as he was about to check whether Chu Xiu was dead or not, Devil Qi and Buddhist light burst out from the scattered Gang Qi at the same time. Chu Xiu's figure was like a demon god as he charged out of the earth Qi storm. His hands formed the 9 words formula of fast and slow, and the 9 seals combined into one. With an unparalleled power, he crushed down on Yerin Long. Chu Xiu wouldn't die so easily if he cultivated the 9 heavens fiend golden body and the great Vajra divine strength at the same time. In terms of defense, he was also stronger than most martial Dao masters. Yerin Long met the attack with his palms. His left palm was surging with stellar energy, while his right palm was surging with demonic energy. The two powers entangled and intertwined, increasing their power by several times. An explosive sound burst out between Yerin Long and Chu Xiu. With the two of them as the center, the ground beneath their feet cracked inch by inch, and the cracks spread out for hundreds of feet. Yerin Long's face was pale, but Chu Xiu's was even paler. His explosive power was indeed amazing. However, he had forcefully resisted Yerin Long's attack earlier, and now he had to use the colorless stopping palm and 9 seals combined into one, which consumed a lot of energy. Even Chu Xiu was a little overwhelmed. However, no matter how overwhelmed he was, Chu Xiu had to kill Yerin Long as soon as possible. Otherwise, his raid on the morgue would be meaningless, and he might even put himself in danger. After his attack failed, Chu Xiu immediately pointed out with a finger. Everywhere it passed, everything was destroyed. Heavenly retribution, holy deity slaying finger. The deathly still energy caused Yerin Long to be extremely shocked. As he defended himself, his figure retreated hastily, but he was still brushed by the finger that was filled with death qi. His arm was instantly dyed pitch black by the death qi, and the deathly still aura was nibbling away at his qi, blood, and meridians. Yerin Long's face suddenly changed and he swung his arm. In an instant, a large amount of blood and a black death qi were forced out by him, but his arm was temporarily crippled. At this moment, Chu Xiu used his spirit as a bow, condensed his spiritual power into an arrow, and the soul-extinguishing arrow burst out. No matter how Yerin Long dodged, the heaven's sun gazing at air skill locked onto his trace. Seeing that there was no way to dodge, Yerin Long roared, and the power of his qi and blood burst out. He wanted to resist the arrow, but the soul-extinguishing arrow entered his body, and he let out a painful roar. Chu Xiu's figure directly pressed on. Although his face was pale because of the excessive consumption, he still slashed with the sky demon dance in his hand. After a few moves, Nie Renlong was on the verge of death. The battle between Chu Xiu and Nie Renlong would end like this. No one present, even Nie Renlong himself, had expected it. After all, one of them was an expert on the list, and although the other was famous, he was only in the oneness of heaven and man realm. Last time in the northern Yin, Nie Renlong almost killed Chu Xiu after becoming a demon. Although Nie Renlong was in a state of being a demon at that time, Nie Renlong could feel how strong Chu Xiu was at that time. However, when he saw Chu Xiu this time, he was shocked to find that Chu Xiu's strength had more than doubled. This speed was simply shocking. Of course, in reality, although Chu Xiu had improved, it was not too exaggerated. It was just that Nie Renlong had overlooked one thing. Back in the northern Yin, Chu Xiu had appeared as Lin Yi. Therefore, at that time, Chu Xiu had not been able to use all his trump cards. Now that Chu Xiu could finally use all his strength, it was naturally not the same as it was in the past. Seeing that Nie Renlong was in danger and almost killed by Chu Xiu with a few slashes, the entire morgue fell into a pessimistic mood. Nie Renlong was the initiator and organizer of the alliance. If something happened to him, would there still be a need for the alliance to continue? Su Yan was also extremely anxious. At this time he wanted to rescue Nie Renlong, and he did not want to be entangled with Mei Qinglian anymore. With a furious roar, Su Yan's body shone with golden Buddhist flames, and he punched out with boundless power. This punch forced Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could rescue her, Mei Qinglian made a comeback from behind him. Under the great technique of the Chia girl, demonic aura surged and danced, blocking Su Yan's path. However, before he could completely destroy the demonic aura, an illusion appeared in front of him. He was clearly only a short distance away from rescuing Nie Renlong, but no matter how he ran, he could not reach Nie Renlong. It was only then that Su Yan realized that he had fallen for Mei Qinglian's great technique of the Chia girl again. By the time Su Yan regained consciousness, a crimson short knife had already appeared in Mei Qinglian's hand, and she was stabbing it at Su Yan's chest. Su Yan put his palms together and spat out a thunderous sound. The Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations was unleashed, forcing Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could make a move, Mei Qinglian had actually come again, which made Su Yan go crazy. The great technique of the Chia girl of the Yin Demon Master was magical because it was not a simple mental power illusion. Instead, it could silently invade one's mind. It was just like what had happened just now. It was clearly a head-on clash, yet Su Yan had mysteriously fallen into an illusion. He had almost been ambushed by Mei Qinglian, and he had actually not sensed it at all. This kind of silent illusionary technique was even more frightening. Su Yan was confident that he could rely on his own strength, willpower, and boundless vitality to withstand the great technique of the Chia girl. However, in reality he had thought too much and had underestimated Mei Qinglian. In this world, one could be a thief for 1,000 days, but there was no such thing as guarding against a thief for 1,000 days. Su Yan had to maintain this tense state of mind at all times to defend against Mei Qinglian's illusion. As such, the more he fought, the more exhausted he became. At that moment, he was not even in the mood to save Nie Renlong. Su Yan wanted to save him, but he was stopped by Mei Qinglian. However, someone else had defeated his opponent on the other side. It was not Yin Huainan who was fighting with Mr. Lu, but Fang Datong of the Giant Spirit Gang. This did not mean that Fang Datong was stronger than Yin Huainan, but rather that his opponent was rather weak. Lu Hongye was one of the weaker ones among the martial arts masters. Coupled with the fact that his legacy was not considered strong, his own power was very limited. Last time he had been defeated in a few moves when fighting with Chu Xiu. Now, facing Fang Datong, the leader of the Giant Spirit Gang, Lu Hongye was also struggling to hold on. The Giant Spirit Martial Manual of the Giant Spirit Gang was a combination of more than 100 martial arts techniques of the Giant Spirit Gang. Although it was not considered a famous secret manual in the Jianghu, its power was not weak. After dozens of moves, Lu Hongye was already heavily injured by Fang Datong and vomited blood. After dealing with Lu Hongye, Fang Datong instinctively looked at Chu Xiu and Nie Renlong. Nie Renlong quickly said, "Leader Fang, come and help me." Fang Datong was about to attack, but at that moment Chu Xiu said coldly, "Leader Fang, we have no enmity between us in the past. I don't mind you joining the demon-slaying alliance today. If you leave now, I'll pretend that nothing has happened. Otherwise, after I leave in defeat today, even if I'm forced to hide in the dark, I'll definitely fight the giant spirit gang to the death. You ruined my future, so I'll kill your entire family. Leader Fong, you must think this through. If you attack today, you better not leave your wife, children, and the trusted subordinates of the giant spirit gang. Otherwise, I'll kill every single one of them I see. Fong Datong's heart suddenly turned cold. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly paused. He believed that with the character and strength that Chu Xiu had displayed, he was capable of doing such a thing. Even he did not have the confidence to defeat Chu Xiu in a head-on battle, not to mention such a terrifying enemy who was shameless enough to hide in the dark, waiting to take a bite out of you at any moment. Sometimes, what was terrifying was not the ferocious tiger baring its fangs and claws in front of you, but the venomous snake hiding in the dark, pouncing on you at any moment. Fong Datong's hesitation instantly put Nie Renlong in danger. He was almost killed by Chu Xiu's saber. He roared angrily, "Fong Datong, is there something wrong with your brain? From the moment you joined the demon-slaying alliance, there was no turning back. You believe the words of a demonic cultivator? Even if you leave, Chu Xiu will not let you off. Today let's join forces and kill him here. Who cares about what happens next?" Chapter 648. The giant spirit gang had been lukewarm until now. Although it had not declined, it had not developed much either. This had a lot to do with Fong Datong's character. This person was indeed not decisive enough, and was somewhat indecisive. At this time he had already joined the demon-slaying alliance. However, at such a critical moment he actually hesitated after being threatened by Chu Xiu. Anyone in his place would be gnashing their teeth in hatred. The sky demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand brought with it an overwhelming demonic energy as it slashed down. At the same time he unleashed the great cycle of mental demons, which transformed into a soul-subduing Hades song, which kept assailing Nie Renlong, gradually weakening his power. Chu Xiu's ability to kill a martial Dao master like Nie Renlong, who had been famous for a long time, with heaven and human unity, was already the limit of what Chu Xiu could do. If Fong Datong had intervened just now, the outcome of the battle might not have been certain. However, in the short moment when Fong Datong hesitated, Nie Renlong's body had already suffered a few more wounds. Seeing this, Fong Datong gritted his teeth and threw a punch at Chu Xiu. Just as Nie Renlong said, he had no way out. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was telling the truth or not, he could only bet on Nie Renlong winning and Chu Xiu dying. Kill him. Nie Renlong advanced instead of retreating with his heavily injured body. He performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand to the extreme. Yin and Yang Qi gathered in his palm and directly entangled the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand. He could not even get away. Seeing that Fong Datong's punch was about to land, a black figure suddenly appeared behind Chu Xiu. It opened its mouth and roared like a ferocious hungry ghost. The evil power devoured everything and directly swallowed Fong Datong. Fong Datong was fighting fiercely with Lu Hongye. Although he was stronger than Lu Hongye, he did not dare to divert his attention to other battles while fighting a martial Dao grandmaster. Therefore he did not see the entire battle between Nie Renlong and Chu Xiu. At this moment, seeing this evil thing appearing in front of him that could devour any power and even wanted to devour his body, Fong Datong subconsciously prepared to retreat and then find a way to repel it. However, Fong Datong's retreat caused Nie Renlong to spit out a mouthful of blood. 70% was because he had overused his power, which affected his internal injuries, and 30% was because he was angered by Fong Datong. At this moment, Nie Renlong finally understood something. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. The so-called alliance seemed strong, but it was just a bunch of idiots dragging them down. The ones who died were always their own people. At this critical moment of life and death, Fong Datong actually chose to retreat cautiously. He was simply a coward. It did not matter if he left, but he had caused Nie Renlong to be trapped here. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Of course, Fong Datong's action was not actually to deliberately trap Nie Renlong. It was just his nature, and it was a completely subconscious reaction. Fong Datong might look tall and mighty, and his nickname was the Ferocious Mighty General. However, under his ferocious appearance, there was an extremely sensitive and cautious heart. Once there was any movement, he would choose the safest method and be extremely cautious. Unfortunately, his cautiousness this time caused Nie Renlong to die. In that instant, Chu Xiu gathered the last bit of power of his essence soul, turning it into a soul-destroying arrow and shooting it out. At such a close distance, even if Chu Xiu did not use Heaven's Sun gazing at air to lock onto Nie Renlong would not be able to escape. With his primordial spirit heavily injured, Nie Renlong let out a muffled groan. However, he actually managed to hold on and did not lose his consciousness. Instead, all the blood and chi in his body condensed into his crippled arm. He chopped down vertically with his palm, and the exploding blood and chi were like a giant blade that slashed towards Chu Xiu. His essence soul was heavily injured, but Nie Renlong could still rely on his own willpower to maintain his consciousness. He could even use his own strength to control the power of blood and chi. This kind of tenacious state of mind was indeed incomparably shocking. Moreover, Nie Renlong had specially studied all kinds of detailed information about this great enemy of his, Chu Xiu. He knew that Chu Xiu had the Great Devil Blood technique. Under the premise that he did not have enough power to suppress the boiling of blood and chi, burning his essence blood was equivalent to suicide. Therefore, he actually came up with this method to fight with Chu Xiu for the last time, and it could be considered as using all his strength. If he burned his essence blood, Nie Renlong could still recover if he did not die this time. However, if he gathered all the blood and chi in his body in one arm and then directly burst out at the end, it was simply equivalent to crippling his own arm. Even if he won this battle, he could only be a useless person in the future. In the face of Nie Renlong's attack, Chu Xiu's figure hurriedly retreated, but Nie Renlong's right hand suddenly grabbed, and the space around Chu Xiu's body seemed to be locked, and the chi of heaven and earth condensed behind Chu Xiu, blocking and delaying his movements. How strong would an extraordinary martial Dao master be when he burst out all the power of blood and chi? This was something that Chu Xiu did not know, and probably not many people in Jianghu knew. After all, there were not many people who could make a martial Dao master of Nie Renlong's level fight to this extent. At this moment, a lot of things popped up in Chu Xiu's mind. In fact, he still had a lot of trump cards, but even Chu Xiu himself was not sure how strong these trump cards could be. However, in the current situation, Chu Xiu was not 100% sure that he could survive Nie Renlong's desperate attack, so Chu Xiu did not have much time to think. He gently raised the demon dance in his hand, but it seemed like he was holding a mountain. Chu Xiu's entire person was immersed in a strange state. This was a martial art that he was unable to grasp. In the past, he had only glanced at it once, but he had been stimulated to the point of vomiting blood. Even now, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could completely master it, but he just needed to borrow a trace of this martial art, just a trace. As the saber slashed down, the saber intent was surging, the saber momentum was turbulent, and the saber energy was vast and surging, like a tsunami tearing the sky and the earth, drowning and devouring everything. Devouring the heavens and destroying the earth's 7 limits, sea breaking. Everything in front of Chu Xiu seemed to be divided into 2 halves in front of him. The heaven and earth yuan chi was torn by the saber chi, and it did not heal for a long time. Nie Renlong's body was also torn by this saber. Almost in an instant, Nie Renlong was no longer alive, his body was neatly cut in half. Until his body fell to the ground, a large amount of blood flowed out. He did not even have the chance to use this last desperate attack, and he was killed by Chu Xiu. Nie Renlong did not die in peace. The power of this saber was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's imagination, and similarly the power was also beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. This was not a power that a human could control, but the power of heaven and earth. No wonder it was said that almost all those who had obtained this martial art did not have a good ending. Using the body of a human to control this saber technique that contained the power of heaven and earth was itself the power of stealing heaven and earth, and it was bound to incur the jealousy of the heavens, so dying a horrible death was considered normal. At this moment, although Chu Xiu had not reached the point of dying a horrible death, after this saber slash, faint cracks appeared all over Chu Xiu's body, like a porcelain doll that had been smashed. Even though Chu Xiu cultivated the 9 heavens demonic golden body and the great King Kong divine strength, he could not withstand this powerful force. Blood seeped out from those cracks, making Chu Xiu look as if he had been fished out of a vat of blood. It was very frightening. Turning to look at Fang Datong, Chu Xiu suddenly revealed a trace of a smile on his face. His whole body was blood red except for his snow-white teeth, but it gave off an extremely awe-inspiring feeling. Leader Fang, you made the wrong choice. There are many choices in this life, but some of them are related to one's life. Unfortunately, you made the wrong choice. Seeing this scene, Fang Datong did not say anything and directly turned to flee. It was not that he was timid, but he knew the gap between him and Nie Renlong. Now that even Nie Renlong was dead, the alliance must have been disbanded. Instead of going back to think of a way to deal with Chu Xiu's revenge, would he still stay here to seek death? However, at this moment Fang Datong did not know that Chu Xiu could not even move a step. He had only forcefully put on a show, but he did not expect Fang Datong to be so easily scared away. Chu Xiu still had dozens of preparation methods to show off. Of course, this could not be blamed on Fang Datong's cowardice. He was incomparably cautious. Even if Chu Xiu were to sing an empty fort strategy in front of him, Fang Datong probably would not dare to test him. At this moment in the battlefield, Nie Rinlong's death and Fang Datong's escape were a devastating blow to the demon-slaying alliance, especially those small forces who were not strong enough. They did not have the mood to fight anymore and all fled. When Yin Huainan, who was fighting with Mr. Lu, saw this scene, he sighed helplessly, turned around and fled. Yin Huainan felt a little emotional about Nie Rinlong's death. The northern Yin land was not as big as the eastern Qi land, so the outstanding figures of the northern Yin martial arts world had some interaction. Although Yin Huainan and Nie Rinlong were not friends, they were not enemies either. They knew each other very well. Nie Rinlong was a man of ability, strength, and ambition. Unfortunately, his luck was not on his side and he died here. The alliance was initiated by Nie Rinlong. Now that he was dead, even if the people of the Great Light Temple were still here, they would not be able to defeat Chu Xiu and the others. It was worth it for him to temporarily retreat. However, Mr. Lu was not satisfied with the fight after Yin Huainan fled. Seeing that everyone in the morgue had retreated in defeat, Su Yin had no choice but to grit his teeth and say, "Warriors of the Great Light Temple, retreat immediately." Su Yan's actions were not empty words. Although he was unwilling, he still had some rationality left. If he continued fighting, he would not be slaying the demon-slaying alliance. He would be courting death. The people of the morgue were completely defeated. When the people of the righteous sects had all fled, even the people on Chu Xiu's side could not believe that they had actually won. Mei Qinglian walked over slowly. She looked a little surprised and said, "I guessed wrong. You were not gambling. You were really confident." Chu Xiu sighed and turned his face to Mei Qinglian expressionlessly. "Help me up." Chapter 649. Chu Xiu could be proud of himself for being able to kill a martial Dao master like Nie Rinlong. However, Chu Xiu's physical strength had reached its limit after the kill. If not for Mei Qinglian's support, he would have collapsed to the ground. Leaning on Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu forced himself to stay awake and said, "There's no need to chase after them. Give everyone an hour to clean up the battlefield. After that, leave northern Yin as quickly as possible." With Nie Rinlong's death, the morgue was destroyed as well. The items in the morgue naturally belonged to Chu Xiu and the others. A force like the morgue, which did not have the time to build up its foundation, would not have many good items. At the very least, Chu Xiu did not think much of it. However, his subordinates and the people from the Inamo clan were very interested in these things, so let them plunder them. If a person in power was stingy and stingy to the extreme, then he could not expect others to risk their lives for him. At that moment, Lu Hongye walked up with a hand on his chest, looking slightly ashamed. "Sir, please forgive me. I'm useless." To be honest, Lu Hongye had not deliberately gone easy on Chu Xiu to kill him. It was because he was truly no match for Fang Datong. He was now in the same boat as Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu died, he would not have a good ending either. Chu Xiu did not care about Lu Hongye's matter. When he was fighting Nie Rinlong earlier, he had been paying attention to the movements around him. He also knew that Lu Hongye did not do it on purpose. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to apologize to me. You are weak. If you are killed in the future, you should apologize to yourself." After this, there are many secret cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. You can take them for reference. There were actually many cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, when Guan Xiu was around, they were basically used as rewards for outstanding martial artists. However, now that the Guanzhong torture room was under his control, Chu Xiu could naturally give them to whoever he wanted. After completely plundering the morgue, Chu Xiu immediately left northern Yen with his men. Of course, to be precise, it was Chu Xiu who was carried out of northern Yen. After all, he did not even have the strength to walk. Meanwhile, in the northern Yen, Su Yun and Wei Shuya's battle had ended. With the two of them as the epicenter, the area within a radius of several hundred zhang had been completely destroyed. It was simply impossible to see what it looked like before. One could imagine how powerful the battle between the two of them was. Su Yun stood there without moving. His expression was still calm as he said, "Old Wei, are you going to continue fighting? I dare to fight to the death, but you don't." Although Wei Shuya was also standing there, compared to Su Yun, he revealed a trace of exhaustion on his face. His complexion was even sickly pale, but there was no need for him to make another move. Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "You're wrong. It's just fighting to the death. I have never been afraid. If I were afraid, I would have been afraid back in Nine Heaven Mountain. However, you are right. There is no need to continue fighting. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, Wei Shuya called Chu Wuji, who was fighting with Su Du. The two of them left immediately. Su Du did not stop them. He just stood beside Su Yun and asked, "Senior brother, who is stronger, you or Wei Shuya?" Su Yun did not answer Su Du directly. He only said, "Unfortunately, Wei Shuya is already old. Time makes the hero. His era is over. When he broke through to the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was already too old." Su Du nodded in understanding. He understood what Su Yun meant. In the battle just now, Su Yun was stronger. If Wei Shuya could enter the true fire spirit refinement realm when he was young, he could still fight with Su Yun. However, he had passed the peak now. Of course, there was nothing for Su Yun to be proud of. There was indeed nothing to be proud of when he fought with an old man who was about to enter the declining phase of qi and blood. "By the way, senior brother, are we still going to the memorial hall?" Su Yun shook his head and said, "There is no need to go." Su Du was surprised and asked, "Why? After defeating Wei Shuya and the others, we don't have to go?" Su Yun said indifferently, "We have been delayed for so long. If Chu Xiu wins, we can only collect his corpse. On the other hand, if Chu Xiu loses, there is no point for us to go. If there are no accidents, Su Yan will bring his people back no matter if he wins or loses." Su Du laughed and said, "Senior brother, do you really trust Su Yan that much? No matter if he wins or loses, he can bring his people back?" Among the heads of the 6 martial courtyards, I am most optimistic about Su Yan. He is also the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm in the future. The wrath of the Vajra was ignited by the fire of the heart. Although the power of the Vajrayard's cultivation method was great, it was easier to violate the precepts of anger. But you can see the result. Su Yan successfully suppressed his anger and restrained his anger. He is so calm that he doesn't look like a martial artist from the Vajra courtyard. On the contrary, Su Xing of the Dharma court can't suppress his anger. If he continues like this, he will die in his anger sooner or later. Su Du touched his bald head and said with a smile, "Shouldn't I be the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm? Senior brother, you are looking down on me." Su Yun glanced at him and said, "You don't count. If you are willing to break through the true fire spirit refinement realm in a normal way, do you still need to waste your time in the real pellet state? I'm afraid you can reach this realm long ago." Su Du laughed twice and didn't say anything. At this time, in the extreme north of the fluttering snow city, Pang Hu was covered in blood. Although Bai Hantian opposite was much better, his own consumption was also very huge. Pang Hu's strength was not weak, but he was just a bandit after all. He didn't have the deep foundation of Bai Hantian, the lord of the extreme north of the fluttering snow city. In a real fight he was still at a disadvantage. Bai Hantian looked at Pang Hu and frowned, "Are you still not going to step aside?" Pang Hu let out a sigh of relief and waved his hand, "Retreat." Pang Hu had already done his best to resist for Chu Xiu for such a long time. If he continued to fight, he would really bury the entire Chilean village here. Seeing Pang Hu retreat, Bai Hantian wasn't very happy. Seriously injuring Pang Hu had consumed a lot of his own energy, and he needed to recover. The most important thing was that he was already late for so long. What was going on at the memorial hall? Bai Hantian didn't dare to delay, and he didn't care about recovering his strength. He immediately sent people to the memorial hall. As for the Huangfu clan, Xiang Wu was still in a heated battle with ancestor Huangfu. Xiang Wu's own strength was indeed quite shocking. Even when fighting with ancestor Huangfu, an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was only at a slight disadvantage. Of course, this was also because ancestor Huangfu didn't want to kill him. After all, Xiang Wu was only besieging the Huangfu clan, not annihilating them. Moreover, ancestor Huangfu was also aware of Xiang Wu's position in the northern Yan royal family. If he dared to kill Xiang Wu, he would have shed all pretense of cordiality with the entire northern Yan imperial court. Therefore, at this point in time, ancestor Huangfu simply stopped. He snorted coldly and ordered everyone from the Huangfu clan to return. The Huangfu clan would not be involved in this matter anymore. At this point, Xiang Wu seemed to have not had enough. He shouted at ancestor Huangfu, "Hey, you're not fighting anymore? You're leaving just like that? Why don't you fight a little longer?" Being able to fight with an expert like ancestor Huangfu who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm was very beneficial to Xiang Wu. He still hadn't had enough yet. However, ancestor Huangfu ignored him and directly brought his men back to the Huangfu clan and closed the gates. Xiang Wu shrugged helplessly. He had already gone too far by besieging the Huangfu clan. If he attacked the Huangfu clan as well, it would be equivalent to shedding all pretense of cordiality. Even if His Majesty allowed him to do as he pleased, he would not tolerate such a thing. The forces that came to support the morgue were all stopped halfway. Only the drifting snow city of the far north still insisted on coming. But before the people from the drift snow city of the extreme north arrived at the morgue, they met with the disciples who had escaped from the morgue after the collapse. When Bai Hantian heard the news, his face was filled with disbelief. Chu Xiu actually killed Nie Renlong and destroyed the morgue. Their so-called demon-slaying alliance was completely annihilated before they could even succeed. Nie Renlong's death was even more unacceptable to Bai Hantian. In the past, when they were young, Bai Hantian had already competed with Nie Renlong. The two of them had secretly fought many times, especially the last time. Nie Renlong's son had died, and he himself had turned into a demon. Under those circumstances, Nie Renlong had not died. Now, he clearly had the upper hand, but he had died just like that. But when Bai Hantian arrived at the morgue and saw the corpses on the ground, especially Nie Renlong's corpse, he had to accept the reality even if he didn't want to believe it. Sighing, Bai Hantian said in a low voice, "Men, stitch up Nie Renlong's corpse and clean up this place. Bury Nie Renlong in the morgue. Dig up the mausoleum and give him a grand burial." Bai Hantian and Nie Renlong were definitely not good friends. But seeing the person who had competed with him in the past end up like this, Bai Hantian felt a little conflicted. The death of a person was like an extinguished lamp. There was no need to bring up the past grudges again. He would collect Nie Renlong's corpse and put an end to it. The Northern Yin incident was so big that all parties were paying attention to it at all times. So in less than a day, the news had spread throughout the Northern Yin martial arts world. Chu Xiu had raided the morgue and killed Nie Renlong. Experts from all sides had intercepted the reinforcements. Even the Northern Yin Imperial Court had intervened. The entire Northern Yin martial arts world was in a mess. It was hard for people to see what was going on and to see what was going on. But the only thing that everyone could be sure of was that Chu Xiu was not easy to kill. Don't be fooled by the fact that he seemed to be in a precarious situation now. He could be completely destroyed the next day and become a symbol of the righteous martial arts world, just like the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain. But to get rid of Chu Xiu, how much would it cost? This was something that needed to be weighed carefully. Chapter 650. After returning to the Guanzhong torture room, the first thing Chu Xiu did was to look for Feng Buping for treatment. The Northern Yin side had been dealt with, but whether the Eastern Qi and other sects would respond, Chu Xiu could not guarantee. He could only race against time to keep himself in peak condition. From this point, one could see the value of Feng Buping, this divine doctor of Jianghu. Chu Xiu was helped into the room and walked out on his own 2 hours later, although he was still weak. Mei Qinglian asked, "What are you going to do about the Eastern Qi side?" "Wait," Chu Xiu said in a low voice. "Wait." Mei Qinglian was surprised. Chu Xiu nodded. The Northern Yin martial arts world is weak. It is all thanks to Nie Renlong that they could unite. I will use all my means to defeat them. But the Eastern Qi martial arts world is different. There are many strong ones. I don't even know how many people in Eastern Qi want to kill me. So, the only thing we can do now is to wait. We will gather all the forces we can and fight. Mei Qinglian frowned. She did not expect Chu Xiu to give her such an answer. What if you go to the Eastern Qi royal family and talk to the Eastern Qi emperor? Ask the Eastern Qi imperial court to help, just like what you discussed with the Northern Yin emperor? Xianglong. Chu Xiu shook his head. It is useless. Although it is the imperial court, the Eastern Qi imperial court and the Northern Yin court are in different situations. The Northern Yin court had allied with the Northern Yin martial arts world. Now they need to suppress the Northern Yin martial arts world. So, I can use this to persuade Xianglong, but the Eastern Qi imperial court is the opposite. The imperial court had no contact with the martial arts world. But after losing to the Northern Yin, the Eastern Qi imperial court has the intention to ally with the Eastern Qi martial arts world. The martial arts sect is the national religion of Eastern Qi. The successive leaders of the martial arts sect have the title of Master of Nation. Although I have no grudge with the martial arts sect, I have killed the people of Chunyang Dao sect. The 3 major Taoist sects may not be on the same side, but there is some relationship between them. Believe it or not, if I go to the Eastern Qi sect and say this nonsense, the Eastern Qi imperial court will kidnap me and send me to the righteous martial arts world. Lu Haochang is a mediocre person. He is a master of the sect. He has no merits except for a long life. He has no merits. Even if I tell him, he will with the Qi imperial court with him. Hearing this, Mei Qinglian frowned. In that case, how much pressure should they face? Seeing Mei Qinglian's expression, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Moreover, even if I have a plan, I don't plan to use it. Do you think the righteous martial arts world has caused such a ruckus because of me? Although I, Chu Xiu, have killed many people, I don't seem to have such a great influence, nor do I attract so much hatred. A large part of the reason is that I am a member of the Yinma clan. If I were a rogue cultivator of diabolism, I'm afraid I wouldn't have caused such a ruckus. A mouse hiding underground suddenly wants to show itself. The existence on the surface will naturally have to see if it has the strength to jump out and bathe in the sunlight." Chu Xiu pointed to himself and said, "I and the entire Guanzhong torture room are a sharp claw of the Yinma clan. The whole Jianghu wants to see what is hidden behind this sharp claw. If it is a mouse, then it will be beaten back. Only a real beast is qualified to enjoy the sunlight on the surface. In fact, in the whole Jianghu, the righteous and the diabolism, loyalty, filial piety, benevolence and righteousness are so complicated. There are morals and rules. But when you remove these messy things, you can only see knives and fists. Your fists are hard and your knives are sharp. You are qualified to speak and make rules. It's that simple." Just as Mei Qinglian was about to say something, a voice suddenly rang out, "That's right. It's hard for a little doll like you to see things so clearly." Wei Shuya's voice came from outside the door. However, he was helped in by Chu Wuji. His face was a little pale. When they left Su Yun's place, Wei Shuya didn't show that he was injured. Actually, he had been holding on. When they left the northern Yin, Wei Shuya finally couldn't hold on anymore and his injuries broke out. Chu Xiu quickly went over and said, "Senior Wei, are you injured? West Chu's divine Dr. Feng Buping is here. Let him treat you." Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, "I'm fine. It's not a big injury. However, the strength of the 9-wonder dragon tree, Su Yun, is really unfathomable. Su Yun's freedom scripture combines the essence of the Zen and Tantric sects. Its power is terrifying. It's said that part of this cultivation technique is derived from the Subodhi monastery's freedom scripture. However, it has been evolved by Su Yun to be more powerful than the freedom scripture. I'm useless. My internal organs were heavily injured by Su Yun and I don't even have the qualifications to fight with that monk. This kind of injury can't be treated quickly, but it won't harm your foundation, so there's no need to see it. I just need to rest for a while. Brat Chu Xiu, you'll have to rely on yourself to get through this final hurdle. Remember what you said just now. Actually, all schemes are fabricated. The simplest way to solve a problem is always to use your fists and knives. Only with a big fist can you win people over. Only with a sharp knife can you make people listen to you and follow the rules you set." Wei Shuya emphasized this point to remind Chu Xiu not to lose himself in this momentary success. This time, although Chu Xiu had used a plan to attack the Morgue Manor, killing Nye Rinlong and destroying the Morgue Manor alliance, Chu Xiu wouldn't be able to find such a good opportunity every time. He wouldn't be able to have this kind of luck and not have any accidents. If he was overly confident in his plan and something went wrong, it would be a fatal matter. A good swimmer would drown. Apart from his own strength and confidence, there was nothing in the world that didn't have accidents. Fortunately, Chu Xiu could still be considered to have a clear understanding of himself. He knew exactly what he was capable of. In the Jianghu, it was easy to say that one could do it, but it was actually very difficult to do it. All of them were a little arrogant and had an illusion that they could do it, but in fact they didn't have a clear idea. Just like Yang Gongdu in the past, he thought that he could stir up the world without relying on strength. In the end, reality taught him a very painful lesson, and he finally learned the importance of strength before he died. Of course, it was useless even if he knew. He had long been smashed into a bloody mist by Divine Lord Luo. Patting Chu Xiu on the shoulder, Wei Wuji said, "I'm old and useless. You'll have to bear the rest by yourself. If you can't win, run. There's nothing shameful about it. As long as you're alive, you can hide for a few years and come out again. Just like me, my sworn brothers all died on the Nine Heavens mountain, but in the end, I, an old man who is afraid of death, was the only one left alive until now." Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Senior Wei, you don't have to be modest. Sometimes, living can be more painful than dying. You have the courage to live, and you even stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. This is already shocking enough. As long as you're alive, there will still be people who remember the lineage of Ninth Heaven Mountain, and there will be people who will inherit it. It won't be as tragic as being completely destroyed. If you die, I guess the 5 great sky demons of Ninth Heaven Mountain will only be a legend. We can only listen to the stories of the past." Wei Shuya sighed and didn't say much. He just turned around and left to find a place to recuperate. In the past, he was the only one left of the 5 great sky demons of Ninth Heaven Mountain. Many people in the Yinma lineage said that he was cowardly. Why was he still alive when the others were dead? Only Wuxia himself knew that even though he was alive, he was carrying an incomparably heavy burden. It was easy to die, and it was also easy to find those enemies of the past. What was difficult was to carry these burdens and live. For the reputation of Ninth Heaven Mountain's 5 great sky demons, and for the entire Yinma lineage. After Wuxia recuperated, Chu Xiu also seized the time to recover his strength. He was prepared to maintain himself in peak condition at all times to welcome the incoming enemies. At this moment, in the Wei County within the Azure Water Sword sect, the entire Azure Water Sword sect was in an uproar. All the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artists had an angry expression. Of course, the Azure Water Sword sect's current state had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. It was because of something else. Previously, when the Azure Water Sword sect heard the news of Chu Xiu, the disciples were excited for a long period of time, thinking that they could finally take revenge. Chu Xiu crippled Shen Bai and even used the identity of Lin Yi to kill Dou Guangchen and dozens of Azure Water Sword sect's disciples. This caused the originally weak Azure Water Sword sect to suffer another heavy blow. It was like adding snow to snow. Therefore, after knowing the news of Chu Xiu, the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples were very concerned about this matter. They were even making preparations to join the Eastern Qis Alliance or the Northern Yan's Alliance. In the end, before they could decide, there was an accident. At this moment, outside of the Azure Water Sword sect, a middle-aged man who was dressed in a crude manner, wearing a gray linen robe and wielding a gigantic saber with a fierce gaze was leading over 1,000 martial artists to surround the entire Azure Water Sword sect. The middle-aged man spoke in a cold voice, "Your Azure Water Sword sect killed my new Jianggang's disciple, and you want to let it go? Your Azure Water Sword sect has dominated the entire Wei County for so many years, and your actions are extremely arrogant. You don't have much strength, but your temper is very overbearing. But today I don't want to spoil you. Lu Gongyuan, I just want an explanation today. If you don't give me an explanation, I don't mind raising your Azure Water Sword sect. Does your Azure Water Sword sect still think that you are one of the 7 sects and 8 factions? To put it bluntly, if it wasn't for Lu Gongyuan's connections, your Azure Water Sword sect would have long fallen out of the 7 sects and 8 factions. After holding the position of the 7 sects and 8 factions for so long, it is time for your Azure Water Sword sect to abdicate." Chapter 651. Some of the sects in the martial world song had never changed for thousands of years. Some of them could only stay on the list for a dozen years before being eliminated. These were all very normal. Every generation had its own talents. Apart from sects like the Great Light Temple, few sects dared to say that they could last forever. The Azure Water Sword sect had been around for a long time and had over 1,000 years of history. When the Wei Kingdom was still around, the Azure Water Sword sect shared weal and woe with the Wei Kingdom. Now that the Wei Kingdom had fallen and became the Wei Prefecture, the Azure Water Sword sect was declining at a speed visible to the naked eye. Right now, they had even fallen to the point where they were being humiliated by others. This middle-aged man was the leader of the new Jiangang, 7 Kill Saber, Su Beigui. He could also be considered as someone from the Wei Prefecture. But in the past few years, Su Beigui wasn't that famous. The new Jiangang under his command was considered a second-rate faction in the entire Wei Prefecture. Although it wasn't weak, it wasn't strong either. However, Su Beigui seemed to have obtained some sort of fortuitous encounter that allowed him to step into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm in just half a year. Moreover, he reorganized the Fury River Gang, slaughtered and annexed everywhere in Wei County, and became the #1 gang in the entire Wei County. If there was anyone in the entire Wei Prefecture that was stronger than the new Jiang Gang, it would definitely be the Wei Prefecture's Azure Water Sword sect. After multiple inquiries and even multiple tests, Su Beigui could finally confirm that the Azure Water Sword sect had fallen and that Lu Gongyuan wouldn't be able to live for much longer. This time, Su Beigui came looking for trouble because when the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples were buying something in a market in the Wei Prefecture, they accidentally found a treasure and had a conflict with the new Jiang Gang. The item was discovered by the new Jiang Gang first, but the Azure Water Sword sect relied on their strength to be arrogant and didn't even put the new Jiang Gang in their eyes. They even threatened to cripple them. In the end, when everyone started fighting, the new Jiang Gang suffered a loss. As a result, Su Beigui took advantage of this opportunity to bring his men to find trouble with the Azure Water Sword sect. Since stepping into the Martial Dao Master realm, Su Beigui had been developing the new Jiang Gang's influence in the Wei Prefecture. Not to mention other things the Nujiang gang had developed quite well. But there was one thing that made him unhappy, and that was the existence of the Azure Watersword sect. The Azure Watersword sect had dominated the Wei County for so many years. Even when the Wei Kingdom was still around, the Azure Watersword sect was the #1 sect in the Wei Kingdom. The local martial artists and factions were used to the existence of the Azure Watersword sect. Even if the Azure Watersword sect had declined, everyone still subconsciously believed that the Azure Watersword sect was still the #1 sect in the Wei County. The Nujiang sect of Su Su Beigui was strong, but in sect was still. Therefore, during this period of time, Su Beigui had been thinking about how to solve this problem. It was only after this incident that Su Beigui realized that he didn't need to go through the trouble of scheming and plotting. So during this period of time, Su Beigui had always been thinking of how to solve this problem. Only after this incident did Su Beigui realize that he didn't need to go through the trouble of scheming. The decline of the Azure Watersword sect was already a reality. Since he had the confidence to deal with the Nujiang gang, then what was the point of doing all these fake things? He would directly attack the Azure Watersword sect and reveal the truth of the Azure Watersword sect's decline. He would let everyone in the Wei Prefecture know who was the #1 sect in the Wei Prefecture. All of the Azure Watersword sect's disciples revealed expressions of anger. How many years had it been when had their Azure Watersword sect been attacked? This was a great humiliation. Everyone subconsciously looked into the sect. Where was the sect leader? Why hadn't the sect leader come out? At this moment the crowd parted. Lu Zongyuan wielded a long sword and walked step by step out of the sect. With every step, his aura became more condensed. When he arrived in front of Su Beigui and the others, Lu Zongyuan's aura was already condensed to the extreme. It even affected the weather in the sky, causing the air to become heavy and stagnant. It was extremely frightening. Su Beigui looked at Lu Zongyuan with a trace of fear in his eyes. He no longer had the arrogance and haughtiness from before. Su Beigui had seen Lu Zongyuan before. At that time, Lu Zongyuan was already the sect leader of the Azure Watersword sect. With one sword sinking into the river, he shook the entire martial world. Let alone the Wei County, even in the entire martial world, he was considered a famous expert. He was ranked on the honor roll and was extremely glorious. What kind of person was Su Beigui at that time? He was just a rogue martial artist that made a living at the bottom of the martial world in the Wei County. After seeing Lu Zongyuan, he didn't even have any thoughts of replacing him and could only look up to him. Don't be fooled by his arrogant and haughty attitude. But after seeing Lu Zongyuan for real, Su Beigui subconsciously felt a trace of reverence in his heart. Lu Zongyuan gazed at Su Beigui and said indifferently, "It seems that I have been in seclusion for too long. Even some stray cats and dogs don't know who the Wei County belongs to. Attacking my Azure Watersword sect? Su Beigui, how dare you?" Even the Northern Yen General Long Quan who guarded the Wei County didn't dare to do something. Now you have done it. Su Beigui, you are good, very good. Under Lu Zongyuan's imposing manner, Su Beigui's forehead had a trace of cold sweat sliding down. The Azure Watersword sect had been in the Wei County for a long time. The person in front of him was an expert that was once on par with the influential figures of the martial world. He might be old now, but his imposing manner wasn't something that Su Beigui could easily resist. Lu Zongyuan casually pulled out his long sword and stabbed it into the ground in front of the two of them. He spoke coldly, "We are both from the Wei County. You and I both represent the Wei County. That's why when your Nujiang gang rose up, my Azure Watersword sect didn't obstruct you. That's because my Azure Watersword sect can tolerate people. I didn't expect my Azure Watersword sect's tolerance to be viewed as weakness by you. What a joke. Seeing that you are young and full of vigor, I will give you a chance. Either you receive my sword and if you don't die, I will let this matter rest. Or you can slap yourself now and get out of the Azure Watersword sect." Under Lu Zongyuan's powerful gaze, Su Beigui's hand was trembling slightly. The strength of Lu Zongyuan's drowning river sword could be seen from his nickname. Even though they were both martial Dao masters, it was precisely because of this that Su Beigui knew how huge the gap was in this realm. Lu Zongyuan's drowning river sword could temporarily split open the Azure Water River. What if this sword slashed on his body? Would he die? Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Slapping himself twice might be embarrassing, but at least he and the Nujiang gang wouldn't suffer any losses. Just as Su Beiguian was about to slap himself and leave, he suddenly raised his head and thought of something. He held the Zamadeo in his hand and looked at Lu Gongyuan. He laughed and said, "Old thing. You are deceiving me. Don't forget I was also born in the Wei County. I know very well what kind of person you, Lu Zongyuan, and what kind of person your Azure Water Sword sect is. For so many years your Azure Water Sword sect has dominated the Wei County. Since when did you have the magnanimity to tolerate others? Since when did you, Lu Zongyuan, give others a chance? If your Azure Water Sword sect isn't strong on the outside but weak on the inside, why would you sit back and watch my new Jianggang rise? If you, Lu Zongyuan, weren't so old that you can't fight anymore, why would you give me a chance to slap myself and leave so easily? With a sneer, the Zanbato in Su Beigui's hand blossomed with a trace of fierce blood light. Boundless killing intent gathered and slashed down. The blood-red killing intent condensed into a demonic shadow that roared and slashed at Lu Zongyuan with boundless ferocity. Lu Zongyuan's prestige in the Wei County was too strong. It was so strong that when Su Beigui saw him in person, he was immediately at a disadvantage and didn't even dare to say a word. However, since Su Beigui was able to establish such a large family business like the new Jianggang, he naturally wasn't a fool. At the crucial moment he finally reacted. Lu Zongyuan might be bluffing. Of course, he didn't dare to be 100% sure that Lu Zongyuan was putting on an act. But in this world there was always a need to take a gamble. If he was right, he would uncover the truth behind the Azure Water Sword sect and Lu Zongyuan's decline. This Wei County would belong to him and the new Jianggang. Seeing Su Beigui's slash, Lu Zongyuan gripped the sword in front of him and revealed a trace of fatigue and old age. He gathered the dipper chi around his body and thrust his sword forward. The Qin River sword intent was still there and gathered the wind and clouds in all directions. However, the power was pitifully small and didn't have the Qin River power anymore. The sword and saber clashed. Lu Zongyuan was forced to take over 10 steps back. He suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood and instantly became extremely exhausted. Sect Master. All the Azure Water Sword sect disciples gasped out in shock as they looked at the scene in disbelief. Lu Zongyuan was actually vomiting blood from a single slash from Su Beigui. What was going on? Lu Zongyuan helplessly revealed a bitter smile. His hand that was holding the sword was still trembling slightly. Originally, with his age he could still hold on for a period of time. But in the Xiaofen heaven, Do Guangqin died and all the burdens of the Azure Water Sword sect were on Lu Zongyuan's shoulders. All the messy worries caused Lu Zongyuan's mental state to be depressed. His qi presence was unstable during cultivation, which caused his meridians to be damaged. He made a mistake that even Xiantian realm martial artists rarely made. He was indeed tricking Su Beigui earlier, but unfortunately he failed. Su Beigui still saw through him. Su Beigui laughed loudly and slashed down with his saber again. From today onwards, the Wei County would no longer have the Azure Water Sword sect. His new Jianggang would be the sole ruler. But right at this moment, an astonishing sword chi suddenly surged out from the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. The sword chi soared into the sky and the aura caused everyone to raise their eyebrows. Lu Zongyuan suddenly thought of something. His eyes that were originally filled with despair suddenly blossomed with radiance. At the moment when the sword chi burst out, a white-clothed figure was carried by the sword chi. Along with his movement, be it the Azure Water Sword sect or the new Jianggang sword-wielding martial artists, their swords were all trembling as though they saw their master. They were no longer under their control and were carried by the sword chi to that person. With a wave of his hand, countless swords slashed at Su Beigui with the soaring sword chi. Soaring 9 heavens, 10,000 swords returned to origin. Chapter 652. Seeing hope and despair was a great blessing in life. Lu Gongyuan didn't expect to experience this scene in his lifetime. Looking at the boundless sword chi shattering Su Beigui's saber momentum, Su Beigui's horrified eyes seemed to completely defeat him. The saber in Su Beigui's hand shattered, and the sword chi entered his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyes flashed with disbelief. Who is this person? For so many years, Kanglan Sword Sect only had one expert, Lu Gongyuan. Who is this guy? But now wasn't the time to think about this. Su Beigui just wanted to escape. At this moment, Su Beigui decisively chose to burn his qi in blood. He used the fastest speed to escape down the mountain. He didn't even care about his new Jianggang members. But as the figure gently waved his hand, countless long swords and sword chi condensed into a giant sword that was hundreds of meters in size. It slashed down. Although the power used wasn't Lu Gongyuan's river-sinking sword, the power wasn't inferior to Lu Gongyuan's peak when he slashed the Kanglan River. No! Su Beigui roared. He hadn't become the top expert in Wei County. He had just stepped into the martial Dao Master realm, and he didn't want to die yet. Endless blood chi and killing intent condensed into a giant blade that slashed down. But in front of the sword that was enough to split the river, everything was shattered. The sky was filled with blood mist, and Su Beigure died without a complete corpse. It was extremely miserable. The figure walked to Lu Gongyuan's side, helped him up and whispered, "Master, disciple is late." Lu Gongyuan opened his mouth and laughed silently, but in the next moment he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Master." Shenbai looked at Lu Gongyuan anxiously and immediately placed his hand on Lu Gongyuan's back. A warm and majestic qi poured into Lu Gongyuan's body. Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said weakly, "Don't waste your energy. My lifespan is coming to an end, and even the gods can't save me. But I am very happy, really happy. You actually did something that countless generations of Kanglan Sword Sect ancestors couldn't do. The heavens haven't forsaken our Kanglan Sword Sect. Now, have you stepped into the real pellet state?" Shenbai's eyes showed a touch of sorrow. He shook his head and said, "No, just a little bit. Because I don't know how to condense the Martial Dao True Elixir. I wanted to figure it out myself, but I noticed the movement outside, so I came out early." Hearing this, Lu Gongyuan was stunned. His face revealed an expression that seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. He did not know what to say and could only say that it was fate. There was actually no danger in the first few realms of a martial artist, but only at the step of condensing the Martial Dao True Pellet would there be some accidents. Although the probability was not high, there were often people who had problems at this step. Therefore, sects like the Azure Billow Sword Sect would have very detailed records of condensing the true martial pill, as well as the various experiences of the seniors. Sect like the Guard Sect would sect True Elixir, but in they and sect Shin and. But Chin he didn't state of sect, but Shin, sect, Chin. He Shin he. That's why such an embarrassing thing happened. When Shenbai noticed that Su Beigure was making a move outside, he couldn't care about anything else and had to come out first. But then Lu Gongyuan shook his head and said, "I am too greedy. It's not easy for you to do this. You can easily kill a martial Dao Grandmaster with unity of heaven and man." Among the younger generation, except for Zhang Qingjin, who has already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, there is only Chu Xiu, who almost became the public enemy of the righteous path and just killed Niren Long. Shenbai's heart trembled and he said after a moment of silence, "Zhang Qingjin has already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm? Chu Xiu actually killed Niren Long?" When Shenbai first walked out of Kanglan Sword Sect, he set Zhang Qingjin as his goal. At that time, Shenbai wasn't arrogant, he was just a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of tigers. But reality gave him a cruel blow. He didn't even see Zhang Qingjin and he was already crippled by Chu Xiu. As for Chu Xiu, who was once his enemy, he had already killed a powerful player on the Wind Cloud ranking list, the Manor Master of the Loyalty Manor, Niren Long, and stirred up a storm in the entire Jianghu. Shenbai instantly felt as if he had missed out on many things. Lu Gongyuan sighed. He also knew that Shenbai had missed out on the most exciting period of time in the underworld. Especially in Xiaofan, Zhang Qingjin fought against a group of young experts, condensed the True Thunder Elixir, and stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. This matter was enough for the Celestial Master residents to brag for hundreds of years. If Shenbai didn't have an accident with his talent and temperament, although he couldn't become Zhang Qingjin, he could at least become like Chu Xiu, one of the members who was challenged by Zhang Qingjin in the past. However, God was fair. Shenbai was well prepared. Now that 10,000 swords returned to origin, although he hadn't reached the real pellet state, his strength was already comparable to most of the real pellet state martial artists. Shenbai helped Lu Gongyuan to sit down in the sect. Lu Gongyuan told Shenbai all the things that happened in the underworld during this period of time, and Shenbai's expression was a little complicated. He had a great hatred with Chu Xiu and Chu Xiu almost crippled him. In the end, this great enemy of his had already stirred up the winds and clouds of the entire Jianghu, while he, Shenbai, was still a nobody. After speaking, Lu Gongyuan sighed and said to Shenbai, "What are you going to do now? You have mastered 10,000 swords returned to origin, and you want to go to the Guanzhong torture room to find Chu Xiu for revenge?" Just as Shenbai was about to nod his head, he suddenly thought of something and spoke in a deep voice. "Revenge can be done at any time, but my Azure Water Sword Sect has declined to this day. Even a nobody like Su Beigure dares to challenge us. It is time for my Azure Water Sword Sect to once again make a name for itself in the underworld. Since the Northern Yen Alliance has been destroyed, then I will go to Eastern Qi and find the Nansang Xiahou clan. My Wei County, after all, was once a vassal state of Eastern Qi." Lu Gongyuan looked at Shenbai with relief. Being able to think about the sect was enough to prove that Shenbai had grown up. He could die without regrets. If it was the previous Shenbai, the other party would definitely impulsively go to Chushio for revenge. But now, Shenbai would suppress the hatred in his heart and learn to think about the sect first. Lu Gongyuan could also rest assured to hand over the Kanglan Sword sect to him. Help me up and gather all the disciples. Shenbai hesitated for a moment. He vaguely guessed something, but he still gathered all the Kanglan Sword sect disciples. Looking at the crowd below, Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, I am old and can no longer wield a sword. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let a despicable person like Su Beigui come knocking on my door. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let down my ancestors. The Kanglan Sword sect has declined in my hands. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let down my ancestors. But, fortunately, Shenbai comprehended the secret technique left behind by the ancestors and killed the enemies. It is enough to lead my Kanglan Sword sect to stand proudly in the Wei County again. So from today onwards, I will pass on my position to Shenbai and will no longer be the Kanglan sect master. The disciples below didn't react. The sect master was actually going to give up his position? Shenbai might have vaguely guessed something, but he still couldn't help but say, Master? Lu Gongyuan weakly waved his hand and spoke in a firm tone, Receive the sword. Shenbai hesitated for a moment, but he still knelt down and received the sword from Lu Gongyuan. This sword is Bai Hong, ranked 87th in the martial world's famous sword manual. It was personally forged by my Kanglan Sword sect's 6th generation ancestor. Bai Hong breaks the waves and advances with indomitable will. Back then, Bai Hong was a divine weapon, but due to an accident, a portion of its spirituality was damaged, causing it to not be considered a complete divine weapon. However, the weapons in the martial world are never famous because of the weapon itself, but because of its owner. Just like the Sword Monarch City's awakening salamander, which was prepared for the Sword Monarch City Lord, and Mount Longhu's slaying evil, which was the Celestial Master's sword. Bai Hong is nameless in my hands. I only hope that you can make it famous in the martial world with you in the future. Shenbai nodded. However, the moment he took the Fogbow sword, Lu Gongyuan suddenly held Shenbai's hand tightly. Streams of extremely pure vital energy flowed into Shenbai's body. Master! Shenbai shouted, but Lu Gongyuan remained unmoved. In fact, Shenbai's current strength was stronger than Lu Gongyuan, but Lu Gongyuan was also a martial Dao master and Shenbai's master. Shenbai actually couldn't break free from Lu Gongyuan's grasp. In that split second of hesitation, Lu Gongyuan had already poured the last bit of his power into Shenbai's body. Although it could not make him a martial Dao master, it helped him cleanse the power in his body, making it much purer. But it was also because of this that Lu Gongyuan's appearance rapidly aged. In almost an instant, his face was covered with wrinkles like withered tree bark, and his body was filled with an aura of death. Master! Shenbai looked at Lu Gongyuan in disbelief and didn't know why he did this. With Lu Gongyuan's current state, as long as he recuperated for a period of time, he would still be able to live for a period of time. Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said in a weak tone, As a martial artist, it is a tragedy to die in bed of old age. I can't do it anymore. I don't even have the strength to protect you for the last time. This is my last gift to you. Bring it into the martial world, become famous, and revive the prestige of my Azure Wave Sword sect. I, Lu Gongyuan, have not let down the ancestors of the past. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Gongyuan's hand that was grabbing onto Shenbai fell, and he was completely lifeless. Master! Shenbai, who had always been indifferent, had a trace of tears at the corner of his eyes for the first time. The other Azure Wave Sword sect disciples were also crying and shouting for sect master. In all fairness, Lu Gongyuan's conduct in his life was flamboyant in his early years, overbearing in his middle years and low profile in his later years. But until the moment of his death, everything he did for the Azure Wave Sword sect was worthy of what he said before his death. He didn't let down the ancestors. Chapter 653. The atmosphere in the Guanzhong torture room was very depressing. When they attacked the Northern Yen, most of them were still excited because they were hunters at that time. But now they were about to face the enemies who came to them. They didn't even know how many of them there were. They became the prey, which was not a good feeling. It only took Chu Xiu one day to restore himself to the peak. He didn't choose to continue his closed-door training. Instead he went to find Wei Shuya. Even if Feng Buping came to treat Wei Shuya's injuries, he wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. He still needed to rest. So, in the Guanzhong Punishment Hall, Chu Xiu found a place for Wei Shuya to rest. Wei Shuya didn't refuse. This was also his attitude. Even if Chu Xiu failed to protect the Guanzhong torture room this time, at least he, an expert in the true fire refining state, was there. Although he was seriously injured and couldn't protect the Guanzhong torture room, at least he could protect Chu Xiu's life. Although the rules of the Yinma clan were cruel, they were not so cruel that one failure would lead to death. Wei Shuya knocked on the door and said lightly, "Come in." Chu Xiu pushed the door and entered the room. Wei Shuya didn't meditate as Chu Xiu had imagined. Instead, he sat on the bed with his legs crossed, lit an incense burner, and brewed a pot of good tea. He held a book in his hand, looking relaxed and contented. However, Chu Xiu glanced at the book. It was not a scripture of Taoism, Buddhism, or diabolism, nor was it a book of martial arts. On the cover there were 4 words, "Mercy, Child," written in rough handwriting. An erotic novel? Chu Xiu's expression was slightly strange. Wei Shuya, an expert in the true fire refining state, one of the 5 skyscraping devils in the past, and a giant of the diabolism who had stirred up a storm, would read such a thing. Wei Shuya coughed and threw the book aside. His expression didn't change at all. He said in a low voice, "Why do you have time to come here? Are you feeling uneasy?" Chu Xiu, who was sitting opposite Wei Shuya, shook his head and said, "I'm the one who chose this path. The battle hasn't started yet, so why would I feel uneasy? I'm just here to ask Senior Wei for some guidance." Wei Shuya asked, "What is it?" Chu Xiu said solemnly, "Something about the real pellet state." Wei Shuya asked curiously, "Don't you have these things?" He knew that Chu Xiu did not have a master, but some of Chu Xiu's fortuitous encounters and inheritances were not weak. Moreover, after Chu Xiu obtained the Guanzhong torture room, the entire Guanzhong torture room's internal energy secret manual could be read by Chu Xiu at will. There were many martial Dao Grand Masters in the Guanzhong torture room. For example, Chu Kuanga and Guan Xiu, after they stepped into the real pellet state, they would definitely leave some insights in the Guanzhong torture room, so Chu Xiu should understand this realm very well. Chu Xiu said, "I have these things, but I want to know something that Guanzhong torture room doesn't have. The human body has infinite potential. In fact, most people don't push themselves to the extreme before breaking through to the next realm. Although it can be exchanged for more powerful power, their achievements are limited. I cultivate martial arts. Although I can't completely cultivate a realm to a perfect level, at least I want to reach the limit in the entire realm, my own limit. At present, within the realm of the unity of nature and man, there are only a few people who can compete with me, but there are still many things that I haven't explored in the realm of martial Dao Grand Master. In the past, I once saw a description in Xiaofan Heaven. In the ancient times, after the Taoist of Lingbao Temple stepped into the martial Dao real pellet state, he could condense the glow of Lingbao. Recently, Zhang Qingjun also condensed the golden core of thunder, and it is said that in the Great Light Temple, some people have also condensed things such as 7 treasure relics. Then, does my demon Dao have a way to condense a special martial Dao real pellet? Wei Shuya's expression suddenly condensed when he heard the words. He looked at Chu Xiu and said solemnly, "You want to try to condense this special martial Dao real pellet? I advise you to be cautious. The power of condensing a variant true pellet is not as powerful as you think. It can only be said to be icing on the cake, and there will be no qualitative change. Instead, there is a great risk. Just like the golden core of thunder that Zhang Qingjun condensed. In fact, the method to condense the golden core of thunder is not difficult, and it is not a secret method that is not passed down. Most of the martial artists in the Taoist Master Mansion can read it at will. But for thousands of years, only Zhang Qingjun has condensed this golden core of thunder, so you can imagine the difficulty. You know very well how Zhang Qingjun condensed the golden core of thunder. The difficulty and danger are not ordinary. Although compared with the ordinary martial Dao real pellet, the true pellet of thunder is indeed strong enough, but after you and Zhong Xian step into the real pellet state, your strength will not be too far away from Zhang Qingjun. It is not worth the risk." Chu Xiu said solemnly, "Some things are not worth it, but should I do it or not? I just don't want to fall behind others, and I am unwilling to give up any opportunity to become stronger. This time is a disaster, but at the same time, the disaster can also become a chance. If I survive it, I will be reborn and my strength will be greatly improved." Wei Shuya stared at Chu Xiu and said, "What if you can't survive it?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Although I'm used to thinking about defeat before victory most of the time, leaving a way out for myself, there are times when I have to be brave and aggressive. I can only look forward and not backward. I have made up my mind, please help me, Senior Wei." Wei Shiya took a deep look at Chu Xiu and said, "Since it is your own choice, then I won't say anything more. It's good that you know what you are doing." As he said, Wei Shiya took out an ancient book from the space secret box and handed it to Chu Xiu. He said solemnly, "This is the ancient book of the Kunlun devil cult about condensing martial Dao real pellet. It was left by my elder brother. It is the original secret book of the Kunlun devil cult. It is said that Sir Dugu Weiwei personally wrote the way to condense the immortal demon pellet." Wei Shiya's elder brother was naturally the leader of the 5 sky demons of the 9 heavens mountain. This person was from the orthodox Kunlun devil cult, so it was not surprising that he had this thing. After glancing at the contents, Chu Xiu was slightly shocked. "Has anyone tried to condense this immortal demon pellet?" Wei Shiya shook his head and said, "After the Kunlun devil cult was annihilated, a portion of the items were destroyed. A portion of the items fell into the hands of the righteous sects that attacked the Kunlun devil cult. There was also a portion that fell into the hands of some devil cult martial artists. My elder brother's lineage belongs to the direct line of descent of the Kunlun demon sect. He had seen this thing before, but before he could even try it, he had already given up. You should have seen the content of it for yourself. It's extremely harsh, and it's not something that people of his cultivation realm can achieve. Therefore, as time passed, many people were willing to try it. Chu Xiu, kid, you obtained the inheritance of Patriarch Dugu, which is considered a blessing in disguise. You are more suitable to condense this item than others. But you better think about the consequences first. Once you fail, it will even affect your current realm and foundation." Chu Xiu nodded. He took the secret manual back to his place of seclusion and flipped through it. As he read, the plan slowly took shape in his mind. At the same time, over at the Azure Water Sword sect, following the death of Lu Gongyuan, the entire Azure Water Sword sect was in a state of mourning. Due to the lack of time, there wasn't even time to give Lu Gongyuan a grand funeral. Shunbai had to set off for Eastern Qi, and the sect could only be temporarily handed over to other disciples to take care of. Shunbai always liked to wear white, and now that he was still wearing mourning clothes, it wasn't too out of place. Speaking of which, the degree of the Eastern Qi alliance, be it speed or other aspects, was actually inferior to the Northern Yen alliance. In Northern Yen, Nie Renlong relied on his own reputation, the reputation of the Morgue Manor, and the support of the Great Light Temple, which was why he attracted so many experts. In Eastern Qi, the Xiahou clan might be stronger than the Morgue Manor, but their reputation was far inferior. Furthermore, the martial arts world of Eastern Qi was vast and full of resources. Chu Xiu had only killed a few people. It wasn't like he had gone on a killing spree in all of Eastern Qi. Thus, there were more people watching than actually doing anything. At this moment, in the Nansang Xiahou clan, Xiahou Zhen was rubbing his head with a headache. Many things had happened during this period of time, and he still had to be responsible for the alliance, which made him a complete mess. Every day there would be martial arts factions of all sizes arriving. Some of them really wanted to join the alliance, while others had the idea of getting a share of the pie. It was either for benefits or for reputation, and some even wanted to compete with him for the position of the alliance leader. All of these gave Xiahou Zhen a huge headache. The news of the destruction of the Northern Yen alliance had spread, but Xiahou Zhen was not afraid. Chu Xiu had just destroyed the Northern Yen alliance, and now he came to Eastern Qi to act presumptuously. First, there was not enough time. Second, the environment of Eastern Qi was much more complicated than that of Northern Yen. Chu Xiu coming to Eastern Qi of his own accord was courting death. However, Xiahou Zhen was a little envious of Nie Renlong. Of course, he was not envious that Nie Renlong was ambushed by Chu Xiu, but he was envious that Nie Renlong had the support of the Great Light Temple, so the alliance could proceed smoothly. On the other hand, he did not have a sect like the Great Light Temple to help him. The people of Chunyang Dao sect were stubborn and self-opinionated. They would rather act alone than join the alliance. There was also the sect of real martial arts. They were the leader of Eastern Qi Dao sect, and even the state religion of the Eastern Qi imperial court. But now they were pretending to be deaf and dumb as if they did not know about this matter. Xiahou Zhen had sent people to invite them, but in the end, they did not even see a single person from the sect of real martial arts. At this moment, a disciple came forward and said, "Master, there are people outside who are rushing us again. When will the alliance officially begin?" Xiahou Zhen frowned and said, "The people are not here yet, why are they in such a hurry? Have the people we sent to invite the Shangshuaying family and the beggar sect returned?" The disciple nodded and said, "They have returned, but the Shangshuaying family said that they have important matters to attend to, so they can't join the alliance for the time being. They only agreed to send Bailu to observe the battle." As for the beggar sect, they said that they could not find the sect leader, so they need a month's time. They will give us an answer when they find the sect leader. Xiahou Zhen waved his hand and snorted. Since they are not willing to come, then the alliance will begin now. Chapter 654. Inside the Xiahou clan's mansion, countless warriors walked in and out. It was much livelier than when the Morgue Manor had formed the alliance. Right now, Xiahou Zhen was in charge of the Xiahou clan. In truth, there was another ancestor in the clan, but the Xiahou clan cultivated the art of imperial soul and was not particularly strong in terms of physical cultivation. The ancestor's physical body had already deteriorated. Although the power of his nascent spirit was still powerful, it no longer allowed him to show his face often and waste his energy. Therefore, most matters of the Xiahou clan had to be handled by Xiahou Zhen and a group of Xiahou elders. Xiahou Zhen had mixed feelings about Xiahou Zhen's patriarch. If not for the forefather, he could have ignored those annoying elders and made the house his own. Those old geezers only dared to act so arrogantly because of the forefather's backing. However, the Xiahou clan's reputation would suffer a great blow if the forefather were to lose his position. At least, before the Xiahou clan had a second expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, the patriarch's existence was necessary. In a courtyard that the Xiahou clan had opened up, everything was ready. Xiahou Zhen walked to the center of the stage and said in a low voice, "Everyone, you must have heard the news from the northern Yan. Chu Xiu is so arrogant that he has no scruples. Brother Nye of the Morgue Manor has died tragically in his hands. Fortunately, the eastern Qi martial world is powerful, so Chu Xiu doesn't dare to act presumptuously. However, the blood debt he has committed must be paid. Today the Xiahou clan will lead the eastern Qi martial world to form an alliance to attack the Guanzhong torture room and kill Chu Xiu. We hope that everyone can help us." Among the crowd below, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious blue clothes immediately stood up and said, "Patriarch Xiahou is right. Chu Xiu is a cruel man. In the minor mortal heaven, the Lu clan did not provoke him, but we were all killed. This is too much." The enmity between the Gaoping Lu family and Chu Xiu was born in the little mortal world. Inexplicably, the people of the Lu family were all killed by Chu Xiu. This made the people of the Lu family gnash their teeth in hatred. Later, when Chu Xiu's identity was exposed, they realized that their enemy was not far away. Some of the people who supported the Xiahou family agreed, but at this time, there was a different voice. "Patriarch Xiahou is right. Chu Xiu should be eliminated. This is related to the face of the orthodox martial world. But don't blame me for my harsh words, Patriarch Xiahou. What right do you have to be the leader of the alliance? None of those present are any less important than you, Patriarch Xiahou." The person who spoke was the master of the Hidden Sword Villa, Qing Tingshan of the Heartless Sword Tomb. Although the Hidden Sword Villa was not very powerful, it was still one of the 5 major sword sections. It was not weaker than the Xiahou family. Xiahou Zhen frowned. "I'm the one who made the alliance happen. Everyone here knows how much effort House Xiahou has put into it. Qing Tingshan, you want to take the position of leader with just one sentence? Don't you think the Hidden Sword Villa is taking it for granted?" Qing Tingshan shook his head and said, "It's not that I'm taking it for granted, but there are so many aces of the Eastern Qi martial world here. Master Xiahou, you are the leader of this alliance. No matter what, you should ask everyone's opinion, right?" As he spoke, Qing Tingshan pointed at the people present. Brother Yuqi of the White Tiger Hall, Brother Mo of the Mo family of Shangyang, Brother Wang Shuangjuan of the Twin Yang swords representing the Crown Prince, Smiling Miller, Qi Jian of the Great Prajna Temple, Brother Qi Yuanli of the Wind Sweeping House, Young Master Ing Bailu of the Shangshuaying family, and Senior Luo Jianyan of the Luo family of the Wu County. Patriarch Xiahou, forgive me for being blunt, but among these people, in terms of status, strength and seniority, you are not number one. I'm afraid you won't be able to convince everyone to accept you as leader. In fact, among these people, not everyone had come because they had a grudge against Chu Xiu. For example, Yu Qifeng of the White Tiger Hall was purely here to watch the show. However, because he was an Eastern Qi and the White Tiger Hall was neither a righteous nor a demonic sect, he joined the alliance because he had the intention of getting closer to the righteous martial world. But when he arrived, whether he would make a move or not would depend on the situation. The Mo family of Shangyang was the same. They knew of the friendship between Mo Tianlin and Chu Xiu. Although this friendship was not enough for the Mo family to side with Chu Xiu, the Mo family's attitude towards joining the alliance was very ambiguous. As for the Crown Prince, even Xiahou Zhen did not expect him to send someone. Twin Yang Swords. Wang Shuangjuan was a middle-aged man with two swords on his back and a cold expression on his face. In the past, this person was a somewhat famous itinerant cultivator in the land of Eastern Qi. His strength was extraordinary, but he had not appeared in recent years. No one expected him to reach the martial arts grandmaster realm as soon as he appeared. He had even become the Crown Prince LV Longji's confidant, which was somewhat unexpected. This time, LV Longji also hated Chu Xiu very much, so he used his power to intervene in the affairs of Jianghu. During the trip to the Guanzhong torture room, Yang Gongdu and Eunuch Chen were killed by Divine Lord Luo and Chu Xiu respectively. However, LV Longji blamed this on Chu Xiu. Divine Lord Luo was far away in the heavenly gate of Western Kunlun. Even as the Crown Prince, LV Longji did not dare to find trouble with an expert of that level, so he could only find trouble with Chu Xiu. Moreover, Yang Gongdu's death really made LV Longji's heart ache. It was not that he had any gay relationship with Yang Gongdu, but Yang Gongdu's existence was simply a savior to LV Longji. As the Crown Prince, he was pressured by his younger brother step by step, and he was often in a weak position, so there were fewer and fewer people in the Eastern Qi imperial court who were willing to support him. Fortunately, Yang Gongdu's appearance helped him to reverse the situation. Even Wang Shuangjuan, a master in the supreme power realm, was roped in by Yang Gongdu. As a result, Yang Gongdu's death was equivalent to losing an arm of LV Longji. As for smiling Miller Qi Jian, although he did not have much hatred for Chu Xiu had a deep hatred for Buddhism. It just so happened that Qi Jian's great Prajna temple was also in Eastern Qi, so Qi Jian had a reason to attack. There was also Luo Jinyan, who also hated Chu Xiu to the core. In the past, he wanted to marry Luo Feiheng to the Shangshuaying family, but it was Chu Xiu who stirred up trouble in the end, which led to the failure of the plan. However, the Luo family had declined, and Luo Jinyan was conceded that he could not do anything to Chu Xiu, who had the protection of the Guanzhong torture room, so he had not come to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. This time, after learning that Xiahou Zhen had formed an alliance, Luo Jinyan took the initiative to come without Xiahou Zhen's invitation. As for Ying Bailu and Qi Yuanli, they were actually just here to watch the show. The Shangshuaying family had always been too lazy to participate in such things. This time they had symbolically sent Ying Bailu here just to show respect to the Xiahou family. Otherwise, if the Shangshuaying family really wanted to make a move, they had no lack of experts in the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It was the same for Wind Sweeping Tower. However, if the Shangshuaying family was just here to watch the show, Wind Sweeping Tower was here to watch the show. For Wind Sweeping Tower, this was a major event in the Jianghu, so they had to be here personally to record it. Qi Yuanli had also volunteered to come. He had been in contact with Chu Xiu for a long time, and they had worked together before and traded information. However, he did not expect Chu Xiu to be Lin Yi from the Yinma clan. This kid had hidden his identity well. Xiahou Zhen looked at Qing Tingshan coldly. As soon as these words came out, he was immediately rendered speechless. How was he supposed to respond? Could it be that everyone here was weaker than him, and only he was qualified to be the alliance leader? After a moment of silence, Xiahou Zhen waved his hand and said, "Since Villa Master Qing thinks that I'm not worthy to be the alliance leader, then may I ask who else wants to be the alliance leader? As long as there's someone here who thinks that he's stronger than me, fine, I'll step aside and let him be the alliance leader. Of course, the prerequisite is that this person has to be able to convince the masses." Xiahou Zhen was taking a step back in order to advance. It was impossible for him to convince the masses, but what about the others? Wouldn't it be the same if someone else stood on this stage? Seeing that the tension between the two sides was getting stronger, Qi Yuanli stepped forward and said with a smile, "Everyone, we're going to the alliance to deal with other people, not to kill each other. It would be a joke if we started fighting before we even saw the enemy. How about this? I have an idea. Let's not talk so much nonsense between us. Let's directly decide the victor based on strength. Whoever wants to be the alliance leader can stand on the stage. We'll fight one round after another, and whoever can stand until the end will be the alliance leader. What do you all think?" Everyone present looked at each other, but no one objected. Deciding the victor with fists was the simplest thing to do. Qing Tingshan laughed loudly and said, "Since that's the case, then I'll take the first round. Patriarch Xiahou, why don't you and I fight first?" Among the people present, there were only a few who could be ranked on the honor list. Although the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique was magical, Qing Tingshan was confident in his sword techniques. Moreover, the outcome of this round did not matter to Qing Tingshan in the first place. The alliance was not established by Qing Tingshan. If he lost this round, he would lose. He would not lose anything. However, if he won, the position of the alliance leader would belong to him. Then, the Hidden Sword Villa's reputation would definitely skyrocket. It would be a free benefit. Therefore, Xiahou Zhen's face was a little dark. Obviously, he had also thought of this. Fighting like this would be disadvantageous to him. He had spent so much effort to establish the alliance, but when it was time to reap the rewards, someone else would be the first to reap the rewards. This was ridiculous. However, at this moment, a young man dressed in white mourning clothes and holding a sword suddenly walked in from the crowd. He said in a deep voice, "If no one comes on stage, I would like to experience Senior Cheng's sword techniques." Chapter 655. In all fairness, Xun Bai's reputation in the pugilistic world wasn't that great. The Azure Water Sword sect had been declining for so long, and only Lu Gongyuan still had some reputation in the pugilistic world. As for the rest, whether it was Xun Bai or the others, they could only be considered as nobodies. Seeing a martial artist who was only at the unity of heaven and man realm in mourning attire, Qing Tingshan frowned and berated, "Which sect's junior is here to cause trouble? Didn't your elders teach you how to respect your juniors? The disciple might not be sensible, but is the master not sensible? Get down, don't mess around." Hearing Qing Tingshan calling him master, Xun Bai's eyes revealed a cold glint. But his expression didn't change at all. He held his sword and said in a deep voice, "Previously no one mentioned that the unity of heaven and man realm can't participate in the contest. Could it be that Senior Cheng doesn't even dare to face a junior's challenge? I am Azure Water Sword Sect, the new sect master Xun Bai. Concealing Sword Villa Master Cheng, please enlighten me." At this moment, Xun Bai wasn't challenging Qing Tingshan as a junior, but as the Azure Water Sword sect master. Qing Tingshan frowned, "You are the new sect master of Azure Water Sword sect? What nonsense. Where is Lu Gongyuan?" Xun Bai said in a deep voice, "My master has passed away, so I am the new sect master of Azure Water Sword sect. Isn't this qualification enough to challenge Villa Master Qing?" Hearing that Lu Gongyuan was dead, everyone was in an uproar. Qing Tingshan's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. In all fairness, Lu Gongyuan was a formidable figure. When he was at his peak, even Qing Tingshan didn't dare to make a move against him. But now that Lu Gongyuan was dead, and the Azure Water Sword sect had declined to the point of pushing a unity of heaven and man realm martial artist to be the sect master. This was simply a joke. The Azure Water Sword sect was still one of the 7 sects and 8 schools because of Lu Gongyuan's existence. Now that Lu Gongyuan was dead, the Azure Water Sword sect would probably be removed from the pugilistic world soon. This new sect master of Azure Water Sword sect might be talented, but he was still too young and inexperienced. At this time, instead of quickly hiding the news of Lu Gongyuan's death and cultivating behind closed doors to the real pellet state, he actually ran around and actively spread the news of Lu Gongyuan's death. This was simply digging his own grave. Qing Tingshan snorted coldly. "If Lu Gongyuan was still alive, he wouldn't let you do such a stupid thing. Since you're just a junior, I'll give you a chance. Leave." Xun Bai shook his head and said, "Sorry, I don't want this opportunity." A hint of anger appeared on Qing Tingshan's face as he said, "I gave you face but you don't want it." As soon as he finished speaking, Qing Tingshan had already unsheathed a long sword in his hand. It shone with a dazzling brilliance, and starlight scattered in all directions when the sword was unsheathed. Each streak of starlight contained an astonishing sword intent. The long sword in Qing Tingshan's hand was a divine weapon. It was ranked 45th in the martial world's famed sword manual, Falling Star. Its grade was much higher than Xun Bai's White Rainbow. There were 108 famed swords in the world, and a small half of them were kept in the Hidden Sword Villa. Xun Bai closed his eyes slightly. This was his first battle representing Azure Water Sword sect in the martial world. Even if he had to face an expert on the reputation list, the Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master, Qing Tingshan, he couldn't lose. If Chu Xiu could kill Nie Renlong, then he could also defeat Qing Tingshan. With such a resolute mood, Xun Bai's White Rainbow was already unsheathed. It was such a casual sword strike, but it contained Xun Bai's extreme concentration of blood and sweat. It made his face faintly reveal a trace of morbid paleness. As the sword thrust out, many of the sword-wielding martial artists found that the long swords in their waists were actually trembling and flying out of their control towards the arena. Apart from the martial Dao masters who were able to suppress their own weapons, the rest of the sword-wielding martial artists could only watch as their long swords flew out of their hands and circled around Xun Bai. Countless sword hums resonated throughout the heavens and earth. Thousands of long swords were in the air, revolving and dancing in a dense manner. As Xinbai's sword descended, the countless long swords were mixed with thousands of sword chi as they continuously attacked Cheng Tingshan. The prowess was simply incomparably horrifying, causing everyone's scalp to go numb. Cheng Tingshan was also incomparably terrified. What are these things? The sword in his hand quickly changed from attacking to defending, but it was attacked by the countless long swords and sword chi, causing him to retreat step by step. Cheng Tingshan's strength was still considered strong. Previously, Su Beigui couldn't even resist against the powerful sword chi of the sect origin swords and was instantly killed. With a long sword in hand, Xinbai suddenly took a step forward. Countless long swords were gathered together by the formless sword chi, forming a giant sword that was hundreds of meters in size. It came crashing down at Cheng Tingshan. With a loud bang, the arena was directly smashed into pieces. Cheng Tingshan's figure was forced back several tens of meters before he stopped. His face was already pale with a tinge of red, and it seemed very strange. On Cheng Tingshan's fallen star sword, there were traces of tiny cracks. Xinbai's attack just now had actually almost shattered his fallen star sword. Xinbai sheathed his long sword with a pale face and said in a deep voice, "Manor Lord Cheng, thank you for letting me win." Everyone present was dumbfounded to see this scene. One move. This Xinbai actually defeated Cheng Tingshan in one move. This strength was a little too terrifying. When did the Azure Water Sword sect have such a person? This person was probably comparable to the top 3 on the Longhu roll. On the side, Ying Bailu also looked at Xinbai curiously. To be honest, he had only seen 2 people who could reach Xinbai's level of explosive power. One was Zhang Qingzhen and the other was Chu Xiu. Even Zhong Xian was slightly inferior. Since the Azure Water Sword sect had such a genius, why didn't they bring him out earlier? If this Xinbai had appeared in the Xiaofan heaven, he would definitely be in the top 3 on the Longhu roll. Ying Bailu was purely sent out to be a mascot. He had no intention of fighting at all, but he didn't expect to get such an unexpected reward. This Xinbai was so much more interesting. Of course, Cheng Tingshan, who had been sent flying, didn't find it interesting at all. He threw the fallen star sword back into the secret space box and took out another longsword. It turned out to be a divine weapon as well, which made everyone's eyes turn green with envy. Some people even thought that if they killed Cheng Tingshan, would they be able to obtain all the items in Cheng Tingshan's secret space box? In fact, Cheng Tingshan's defeat just now was just a mistake. He didn't expect Xinbai to be so strong. That was why he made the first move without checking, and it was too late to defend himself. That was why he ended up in such a sorry state. Just as Cheng Tingshan was about to make another move, Xiahou Zhen sneered. "Cheng Tingshan, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. You've lost this round. If you don't win the first time, you'll fight again. Are you trying to be shameless here without caring about anything? Your hidden sword villa can be shameless, but this time, our Eastern Qi Alliance can't afford to waste any more time." Although the duel did not state whether being blasted out of the arena was considered a loss, Cheng Tingshan had been blasted away by Xinbai's sword in front of everyone's eyes and fell off the arena. If this was not considered a loss, then it was indeed a little unreasonable. Cheng Tingshan's face was flushed red. He was the master of the hidden sword villa and a senior in the martial world. But today he lost to a junior like Xinbai in front of everyone. This was a great humiliation. Everyone present didn't care if Cheng Tingshan underestimated his opponent or if he still had a trump card. In their eyes, Cheng Tingshan had lost. With a heavy snort, Cheng Tingshan walked to the side and sat down with a dark expression. Xiahou Zhen laughed. "I didn't expect the Azure Water Sword sect to have such an outstanding person like Xinbai. Sect Master Lu may have passed away, but his spirit in heaven will be gratified. Xinbai has won this round. Who will be the next one?" Xinbai suddenly said, "I'm not here to fight for the position of alliance leader. Based on my seniority and experience, I don't have the qualifications to be the leader. Since Patriarch Xiahou was the initiator of this alliance and spent so much effort on it, it only makes sense that he should be the leader." If Lu Gongyuan could see Xinbai's performance today, his spirit in heaven would definitely be gratified. In the past, Xinbai was a man of few words, simple and crude, and usually didn't consider the consequences. But now, Xinbai had learned to do things with the mentality of a true sect master. The Azure Water Sword sect was weak and Xinbai was a junior. Even though he was strong enough, but if they really fought, everyone here might not lose to him. Cheng Tingshan only lost because he underestimated his opponent. Therefore, if he insisted on fighting for the position of alliance leader, Shunbai might not have a good ending. On the contrary, he used his strongest ability to defeat Qing Tingshan the moment he showed up. He won everyone's respect and made a name for the Azure Water Sword sect. If he took a step back, he would gain Xiahou Zhen's favor. Why not? As expected, after hearing Shunbai's statement, Xiahou Zhen immediately revealed a trace of delight. The head of the Lu family was on Xiahou Zhen's side. When he heard that, he immediately stood up and said, "Sect leader Shen is right. Brother Xiahou has been running around for the sake of the alliance, which is why we are all gathered here. In terms of understanding of the alliance, none of us here can compare to Brother Xiahou. It is indeed a bit too much to let someone else be the alliance leader." As Qing Tingshan was humiliated and severely injured, no one stood up to object. The one with the most thoughts was Qing Tingshan. The rest were either undecided and were prepared to watch the show, or they had a grudge against Chu Xiu. It didn't matter who the alliance leader was, as they only wanted to kill Chu Xiu. Therefore, no one stood up to object, except for Qing Tingshan, who still had a dark expression. Xiahou Zhen revealed a smile, stood in the center and cupped his hands together, saying, "Fortunately, I received everyone's favor and became the leader of this alliance. I will definitely lead everyone to kill Chu Xiu, that demon of the demonic path, and destroy the Guanzhong Discipline Hall, returning justice to the martial world." Chapter 656. Outside Guanzhong City, the bustling Guanzhong City, which used to be in the center of the three countries, was dead silent. There were almost no merchants coming and going. The merchants who came and went from the three countries were not idiots. The pugilistic world was in a state of panic. No one knew if Chu Xiu could survive this. At this moment, it had even escalated to a battle between the orthodox martial arts world and the Yinma clan. Perhaps in the end, even the true fire spirit refinement realm experts would take action and destroy the Guanzhong torture room. If they still walked into the Guanzhong torture room now, they would be courting death. Of course, according to insiders, there were already true fire spirit refinement realm experts taking action in this battle. They were the first seat of the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zhen Hall, Su Yun, and the Yinma clan's Wei Shuya. However, because there were no witnesses, most people thought it was just a rumor. Some of the Guanzhong Torture Hall martial practitioners standing on the walls of Guanzhong City all had grave expressions. Those who should have escaped had already escaped. Those who didn't escape were not loyal to Chu Xiu, but to the entire Guanzhong torture room. As for some people, they were reluctant to give up their positions and status. They didn't want to leave and wanted to bet on Chu Xiu winning. Chu Yuanxing was also standing on top of the city wall. He had a worried look on his face as he looked at Chu Xiu and said, "You said that you wouldn't lie to me. What is going on now?" This is a grudge between the Yinma clan and the orthodox sections. In the end, the entire Guanzhong torture room has been dragged into this. If you lose, the entire Guanzhong torture room will be destroyed. Chu Xiu said calmly, "Brother Chu, don't be silly. Don't you understand? The time for the Guanzhong torture room to be neutral has passed. The Guanzhong torture room needs to find a backer. It's either righteous or demonic. Even if I'm not in the Guanzhong torture room without Hall Leader Guan, do you think the Guanzhong torture room can protect its foundation?" In the end, he still had to choose a side. "Brother Chu, do you really not know whether to rely on me or those righteous sects? Others may not know what happened to Lord Chu Kuanga back then, but don't tell me you don't know?" Chu Yuanxing sat down dejectedly because he was very familiar with the conduct of those righteous sections. Among the people that Chu Kuanga had offended in the past, there were actually more righteous sects than demonic sections. In the past, the Hidden Devil clan kept a low profile and almost never clashed with Chu Kuanga. The Bright Demon clan was not very high profile. Under the suppression of the entire orthodox martial world, they were almost not arrogant enough to cause trouble all day long. Only those so-called righteous sects had done a lot of arrogant and domineering things, taking advantage of their power to bully others. Chu Kuanga had either stopped them or clashed with them, and the two sides had formed a lot of hatred. "Are you sure you can survive this?" Chu Yuanxing looked at Chu Xiu with hope in his eyes. At this time, he somewhat regretted taking over the position of Hall Master. In fact, to put it bluntly, Chu Yuanxing was not bad in nature, but he was a little arrogant and had little ambition. If Chu Xiu had not used the Heart Demon rotation technique to influence Chu Yuanxing would not have agreed to take over the position of Hall Master. If not for the position of Hall Master, he could have left the Guanzhong torture room with his family property, but now he had to accompany Chu Xiu to wait for death. This feeling was not good. Looking ahead, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Confidence? Except for God, No one dares to say that they have absolute confidence in everything they do. Just as Chu Yuanxing was about to say something, the martial artist standing on the city wall suddenly shouted nervously, "They're here." Everyone was shocked and quickly looked down. However, to their surprise, there were only dozens of Taoist priests, and they were not from the Eastern Qi Alliance. This time the person who brought the people was Su Yangzi of the Chunyang Dao sect. He did not wait for the people from the Eastern Qi Alliance to come with him at all. Instead he came alone with his people. Seeing this scene, even Chu Xiu had a strange expression on his face. He had seen stupid people, but he had never seen someone as stupid as Su Yangzi. He actually did not care about the faces of so many forces in the Eastern Qi Alliance and came first with his people. Did he mean that the forces in the Eastern Qi Alliance were not worthy of being on his side? Moreover, it was unknown whether Su Yangzi was arrogant or conceited. He thought that he, a martial Dao master, and dozens of disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect could destroy the Guanzhong torture room and kill him, Chu Xiu? What a joke. Su Yangzi looked at Chu Xiu, who was standing on the city wall, with a flash of a complicated expression in his eyes. His senior brother had died in the hands of this junior, and his reputation had been ruined. Naturally, Su Yangzi wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. However, the Chunyang Dao sect had been exterminating demons and defending the Dao for so many years, even at the expense of their own strength. In the end, after Zhen Yangzi died, most people in the underworld were only gloating. This made Su Yangzi feel a little disappointed. He did not know whether what he had done all these years was right or wrong. However, Su Yangzi soon threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. He looked at Chu Xiu, who was on the city wall, and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you know what kind of situation you're in now. Today, I'm not here on behalf of the Chunyang Dao sect to exterminate demons and defend the Dao. I'm only here to settle my personal grudge. Senior brother Zhen Yangzi died in your hands. Today, do you dare to fight with me and settle the grudge? If you win, the grudge between you and the Chunyang Dao sect will no longer have anything to do with you. This time the Eastern Qi Alliance attacked you, and the Chunyang Dao sect will not intervene. If you lose, there's naturally no need to say anything. The current you can't afford to lose. Do you dare to fight with me?" Su Yangzi shook off the Eastern Qi Alliance and came to find trouble with Chu Xiu alone. In fact, it was not because he did not know what was going on and came to seek his own death. Naturally, he had his own plans. In the past, Zhen Yangzi was killed by Chu Xiu and Xiaofeng Tian, which also caused the reputation of the Chunyang Dao sect to plummet in the Jianghu. People said that the martial Dao masters of the Chunyang Dao sect were not even comparable to the junior martial artists. They completely ignored the fact that Zhen Yangzi was actually killed by Chu Xiu and Li Failian. Therefore, this time, Su Yangzi not only wanted to take revenge for his senior brother, but he also wanted to use this matter to restore the reputation of the Chunyang Dao sect. Didn't you say that the martial Dao masters of the Chunyang Dao sect were not as good as the junior martial artists? In that case, he would defeat Chu Xiu one-on-one in front of everyone. This way it would be better than any rebuttal. Therefore, the question now was whether Chu Xiu would agree or not. In Su Yangzi's opinion, Chu Xiu would agree. If Chu Xiu agreed now, it would be enough for him to face him alone. If he did not agree and the Chunyang Dao sect joined the Eastern Qi Alliance, Chu Xiu would have to face more opponents. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at Master Su Yangzi and suddenly burst into laughter. Su Yangzi frowned and said, "What are you laughing at? Are you going to agree or not?" Chu Xiu laughed and said, "I'm just laughing at some people for taking it for granted. Su Yangzi, the people of the Chunyang Dao sect are not good at using their brains. Since you're not good at this, don't use it. Otherwise, you'll only make a fool of yourself. Are you going to defeat me on the spot and clear the name of the Chunyang Dao sect?" Su Yangzi frowned even more. It seemed that he did not expect his thoughts to be seen through by Chu Xiu so easily. Reality proved that the length of one's life had nothing to do with how smart one's brain was. People like Su Yangzi had grown up in the pure Yang Dao sect since he was young, so he had already developed a simple and direct personality. He was still too inexperienced to play mind games with Chu Xiu, who had been at the bottom of the Jianghu. Su Yangzi snorted and said, "So what if I am? You don't dare to agree?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why should I agree? Su Yangzi, since you came here alone to court death, don't blame me." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's figure landed on the city wall. Then, faceless demon sects Mr. Lu, Chu Wuji, Mei Qinglian, and the others attacked Su Yangzi one after another. In an instant, a monstrous demonic aura rushed into the sky. Su Yangzi's expression suddenly changed and he said, "Chu Xiu, by doing this, aren't you afraid that you will fight to the death with the Chunyang Dao sect?" Chu Xiu just snorted and did not say anything. Ever since he killed Jin Yangzi, he and the Chunyang Dao sect had become mortal enemies. Even if he really finished off Su Yangzi one-on-one and Su Yangzi kept his promise, it did not mean that the other people from the Chunyang Dao sect would keep their promise like Su Yangzi and not look for trouble with him. Therefore, once the people from the Chunyang Dao sect looked for trouble with Chu Xiu, with Chu Xiu's personality, he would definitely not back down. At that time they would become mortal enemies again. Therefore it was better to kill them now. Su Yangzi fiercely gritted his teeth and the pure yang energy around his body exploded. The pure yang Dao sword in his hand shone with a dazzling light and a majestic blood qi was integrated into the Dao sword. He wanted to fight to the death with Chu Xiu and the others. However, on Chu Xiu's side, the three people were not weak martial Dao masters. Chu Xiu's strength was even higher than that of a martial Dao master. The moment they exchanged blows, the pure yang Dao sword had already been forcefully shattered. However, at this moment, a dazzling sword light suddenly fell. The extremely hot pure yang sword qi extinguished everything. The monstrous demonic flames were like melting snow under the pure yang sword qi, extinguishing them one after another. Chu Wuji, Mr. Liu, and Mei Qinglian were all martial artists who only cultivated demonic techniques. Therefore, the pure yang sword qi was extremely lethal to them and actually forced them to retreat. Only Chu Xiu could resist for a while because he cultivated the secret techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic Tao. However, he was also forced back by the pure yang sword qi. In front of Su Yangzi, a sloppy middle-aged Taoist was holding a simple long sword with Tao patterns engraved on it. He stood there lazily and smiled at Su Yangzi. "Martial nephew Su Yangzi, what did I say? Your glabella is dark and I'm afraid it's a bad omen. I'm very worried about you, so I specially invited the Patriarch's pure yang sword to save you. How about it? Are you touched?" Chapter 657. Su Yangzi looked at Shi Yunzi in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He said hesitantly, "Shi Yunzi? Martial uncle, why are you here? And your strength?" The Shi Yunzi in front of him was like a different person from the Shi Yunzi in his memory. Although his appearance and personality were exactly the same, the Shi Yunzi in front of him was already at the peak of real pellet state, far beyond him. There was also the pure yang sword in Shi Yunzi's hand. This sword seemed to be simple and unadorned, and there was nothing special about it. However, this sword was the sword of the former Chunyang Dao sect's founder, Lu Chunyang. It was ranked 5th in the Jianghu's famous sword manual. It required extremely pure yang aura to be used. In the Chunyang Dao sect, only the current Chunyang Dao sect's leader was qualified to use the pure yang sword. Su Yangzi never expected that Shi Yunzi could also use the pure yang Dao sword. Looking at the shocked Su Yangzi, Shi Yunzi said calmly, "I say, martial nephew Su Yangzi, do you really think that my chief master took me in as his disciple before he died just because he thought I was smart, straightforward, and adorable? No matter what, I have called you my nephew for so many years. At critical moments you still need to rely on me to support you." Chu Wuji looked at Shi Yunzi and said in a deep voice, "It is said that the previous Chunyang Dao sect's leader found a genius with a natural pure yang Dao body and accepted him as a disciple, but there has been no news. That person should be you, right? Your pure yang Dao sect's lineage is really lucky. You've clearly declined, yet you can still find an existence like you." Shi Yunzi shook his head and said, "Even the sun and the moon have their ups and downs, let alone a sect. I think it's my fortune that my chief master accepted me. At least I don't have to be a servant who serves tea and drinks for others all day long. Of course, other than the fact that I can't get close to women and break my primordial yang Dao body, I'm actually living quite comfortably in Chunyang Dao sect." Shi Yunzi turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and sighed, "I have no enmity with you, nor do I have any enmity with your lurking demon clan. However, as a member of the pure yang Dao sect, the sect's enmity naturally becomes my enmity. I was too lazy to make a move, but now that I have appeared here with the pure yang sword, let's put an end to this matter. The people of the pure yang Dao sect can't die in vain. Although Zhenyang Zi is indeed stubborn, he is still a member of the pure yang Dao sect. Chu Xiu, even if you don't believe what Su Yangzi said just now, you can fight with me now. With my position in the pure yang Dao sect, no one will go against what I said." Shi Yunzi spread his hands and said, "Then I'll tell senior brother sect leader. How can he not know how to respect the old and cherish the young?" Shi Yunzi shrugged and said, "Then I'll tell senior martial brother sect master. What can we do if he doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young?" Shi Yunzi spread his hands and said, "Then I'll tell senior brother sect leader. How can he not know how to respect the old and cherish the young?" This person seemed a little unruly, but his strength was unfathomable. Although he was pressuring them step by step, he actually did not have much killing intent. Shi Yunzi seemed a little unruly, but his strength was unfathomable. Even though he was pressuring them, he actually didn't have much of a murderous intent. While Chu Xiu was thinking, a large number of martial artists appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. As some of them were mobilized, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists, and they directly surrounded the Guangzhou torture room. Just as Chu Xiu was pondering this, a large number of cultivators appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. Furthermore, as some of them were mobilized, they were densely packed together. There were at least tens of thousands of cultivators surrounding the Guangzhou Disciplinary Hall. Just as Chu Xiu was thinking, a large number of martial artists appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. As some of them were mobilized, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists, and they directly surrounded the Guangzhou torture room. Shi Yunzi spread his hands casually and said, "Look, even if you want to agree now, I'm afraid you can't." Xiahou Zhen didn't care so much at this time. He directly shouted, "Surround Guangzhou City. Don't let a single demon go." Xiahou Zhen's ability to organize was quite good. The martial artists who came to participate in the alliance were reorganized into small teams by him. At this time when he gave the order, it was very orderly. Of course, he could only order people from the Xiahou clan and some martial artists from small forces. As for people like Qing Tingshan and the others, even if he wanted to order them, they couldn't. Of course, he could only order the people on the Xiahou clan side and some warriors from smaller forces. As for people like Qing Tingshan and the others, even if he wanted to, he could not order them. He had always thought that his son died in the hands of Lin Yi of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't find anyone to take revenge on, so he could only give up. He had always thought that his son had died in the hands of Lin Yi of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't find anyone to take revenge on, so he could only give up. It was not until Chu Xiu's identity was exposed that he realized that his enemy was actually so close to him. However, Xiahou Zhen wasn't Nie Rinlong. His heart was much harder than Nie Rinlong's. Although Xiahou Wujiang was the most outstanding of his son's death was still not as important as his own power. This time he put in so much effort to launch the Eastern Qi Alliance. In fact, 99% of the reason was because he wanted to enhance his reputation and position in the Xiahou clan. Revenge for his son was only a very small part of it. Xiahou Zhen stood up and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, when you were running amok and killing innocent people in the past, did you ever think that you would have such a day? The cycle of cause and effect, retribution. Now your retribution has come." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Xiahou Zhen, you people always like to do these hypocritical things before the battle starts. You put yourself above righteousness and make it seem like you're so noble. In fact, everyone has done a lot of dirty things. Xiahou Zhen, do you dare to slap your conscience and say that you haven't done a single evil thing? Ridiculous." Xiahou Zhen sneered, "You have a sharp tongue." After saying that, Xiahou Zhen directly turned his eyes to Chu Wuji and said in a deep voice, "For so many years your Yinma clan has been hiding in the dark. Everyone has minded their own business. But this time Chu Xiu has gone too far. The righteous martial arts world will definitely not tolerate it. Chu Wuji, you are an understanding person. Hand over Chu Xiu and your Yinma clan will withdraw from the Guangzhou torture hall. Everyone will still mind their own business. Otherwise, your Yinma clan has been recuperating for such a long time. I'm afraid that this time your vitality will be greatly damaged." Shi Yunzi, who was standing to the side, also leaned on the pure yang sword and said with a smile, "That's right. Fighting and killing are quite boring. Why don't we all sit down, drink some wine and have a good discussion?" Everyone present looked at Shi Yunzi with a strange expression. Where did this weirdo come from? Even in Chunyang Dao sect, apart from the current sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, no one knew about Shi Yunzi's background, let alone outsiders. Even Chu Wuji had only vaguely heard some rumors, but he did not know Shi Yunzi's name. However, although the people present did not know Shi Yunzi's background, a martial Dao master of Chunyang Dao sect would definitely not be a weakling. Su Yangzi's eyebrows twitched at the side. If Shi Yunzi had not displayed his extremely powerful strength and saved him just now, he would even have the heart to curse now. Now, Shi Yunzi's behavior was simply a disgrace to the Chunyang Dao sect. That was Chunyang Dao sect's most precious divine weapon, the pure yang sword, which was ranked 5th in the world-famous sword manual. In the end, it was being used as a crutch by Shi Yunzi. What a scandal. Xiahou Zhen glanced at Shi Yunzi. He did not understand this guy's background, so he did not pay attention to him. He asked the Yinma clan to hand over Chu Xiu not because he did not want to fight and kill, but because he did not want to suffer too heavy a loss on his side. After all, although they were in an alliance, most of them were disciples of the Xiahou clan. Moreover, Xiahou Zhen also wanted to gain a reputation of subduing the enemy without fighting. Chu Wuji chuckled and said, "I'm indeed a sensible person. Because I'm a sensible person, I know that this time the Yinma clan cannot retreat and will not retreat. Since when did the people of Jianghu have the impression that the Yinma clan must lurk in the dark to survive? Xiahou Zhen, you should know that this matter has not been between you and Chu Xiu from the beginning. It involves the entire Yinma clan. Do you think I will retreat?" Chu Xiu stepped forward and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said, "Xiahou Zhen, don't talk nonsense. You are too slow. I have been waiting for you for a long time. If I had known that you were so slow, I would have personally led people to Eastern Qi to find you." Chu Xiu pointed at his head and sneered. "Don't all of you want to kill me, Chu Xiu? My head is right here. I'd like to see who has the life to take it." Before Xiahou Zhen could say anything, a person beside him stepped forward and said coldly, "I'll take it." In an instant, the whistling sword qi exploded, turning into a sky full of sword wool that danced and circled around Shenbai's body. As he walked towards Chu Xiu, the sword qi directly crushed down. Seeing Shenbai's sudden attack, Xiahou Zhen was caught off guard. However, the Yinma clan did not retreat. They had no other choice but to fight. Therefore, Xiahou Zhen waved his hand and shouted in a low voice, "Attack!" As soon as he finished speaking, the warriors beside him had already rushed forward. At the same time, the city gates of Guanzhong opened wide. The warriors belonging to the hidden devil lineage and Chu Xiu's subordinates were all mobilized to meet the enemy without fear of death. However, the Yinma clan and Chu Xiu's side had already begun to show signs of weakness. They seemed to be unable to resist. Originally, there were many people in the Guanzhong torture room. However, there were not many people who were truly loyal to Chu Xiu and would die for him. Therefore, Chu Xiu could only transfer the others to other places in Guanzhong to guard. Only his trusted aides were left, but they were still at a disadvantage in terms of numbers and strength. Chapter 658. Shenbai had a deep hatred for Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu did not have much of an impression of Shenbai. Ever since he stepped into the Jianghu, the number of people who had died in his hands was uncountable, let alone Shenbai, who had been crippled by him after just one attack. Therefore, it was not until Shenbai stood up and attacked that Chu Xiu was stunned for a moment before he realized who Shenbai was. At the same time, a look of surprise appeared on his face. In the past, he had crippled Shenbai, but in the end, not only did Shenbai recover his cultivation after such a short period of time, but he had also mastered such a powerful sword technique. How did he do it? Chu Xiu did not have time to investigate further. Endless Buddhist light burst out from his body, and the golden Buddhist light was as hot as fire, releasing endless power. The shadow of Vairocana appeared behind Chu Xiu, and the Buddhist light illuminated the world. Sun-switching technique. The sound of Buddhist chanting rang out, and the endless Buddhist light came. The sword qi melted, and it was all blocked by the Buddhist light. The boundless majesty even caused the expression of the smiling Maitreya monk below to change. He even thought that he was facing the first seat of the Great Light Temple's 6 great martial academies. In the face of a pure strength martial technique like the sun-switching technique, Shenbai's expression did not change, but his heart was faintly shaken, and there was a look of shock in his eyes. After just one exchange, he had already discovered that in terms of strength he was not as good as Chu Xiu. A sword technique like the 10,000 ancestral swords was indeed extremely strong, and he had comprehended it by chance. However, he was only at the entry level and he was still far from mastering it. However, no matter how strong a martial technique was, it still needed strength to support it. With the 10,000 ancestral swords, his instantaneous explosive power was enough to instantly kill a new martial arts master like Su Beigui, but it could not deal with people with strong strength. Chu Xiu took a step forward, and the Buddhist light around him dissipated. He casually pointed out with a finger, and the Buddhist light turned into demonic energy. The immortal slaughtering finger descended, and black ripples appeared in the void. Everywhere it passed, even the qi of heaven and earth was extinguished by the extreme killing intent. The fogbow sword stretched out and countless sword qis circled and danced around Shenbai. They were so densely packed that even Shenbai's figure could not be seen. They blocked in front of him, helping him to block the power of Chu Xiu's finger. The 10,000 swords returned to origin and the myriad of sword skills combined into one, creating endless transformations. However, under Chu Xiu's power, the countless sword chis were constantly being melted away by the nirvana finger. Shunbai frowned deeply. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Chu Xiu's strength had somewhat exceeded his expectations. He had been in closed-door training for such a long time, and Chu Xiu, a former opponent, had obtained even more power than he had in the Jianghu. At this moment, when Shunbai was facing Chu Xiu, he even felt a sense of helplessness like when Chu Xiu was facing Zhong Xian in the past. Back when Chu Xiu fought with Zhong Xian, Chu Xiu could rely on his powerful martial skills and explosive power to fight evenly with Zhong Xian in the early stages. However, in the later stages, with Zhong Xian's profound foundation of power, he could forcibly drag Chu Xiu to death. Now, when Shunbai was facing Chu Xiu, he was in an even more disadvantageous position. Chu Xiu's foundation of power was more profound than his, but his explosive power was not any weaker. The sword intent around Shunbai's body was raised to the limit. 10,000 strands of sword chi spiraled around him, and every strand of sword chi contained the might of the way of the sword that Shunbai had bestowed upon him. For a moment he was evenly matched with Chu Xiu. At this moment the people below were also fighting fiercely. Chu Wuji was the first to make a move, standing in front of Shi Yunzi. This person's power was unfathomable, and the only person present who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him in terms of cultivation was Chu Wuji. Moreover, Shi Yunzi was holding the pure yang sword in his hand, and he posed the greatest threat among all the people present. Looking at Chu Wuji, who was charging at him with a murderous aura, Shi Yunzi shook his head helplessly and said, "I'm just here to watch the show. Why are you targeting me?" However, even though he said that, he still held the pure yang sword in his hand and charged at Chu Wuji. Mr. Lu followed closely behind Chu Xiu to block Zhen Yangzi, while Mei Qinglian faced Xiahou Zhen. Xiahou Shi's spirit control art was extremely evil, but it was completely suppressed by Mei Qinglian's great beauty art. She could not unleash much of its power at all. Lu Hongye, who was hiding in the dark, launched a sneak attack on Qing Tingshan, but she was suppressed by Qing Tingshan with several moves, and was immediately at a disadvantage. Speaking of which, Lu Hongye was the most unlucky one among Chu Xiu's subordinates. Although he was a newly advanced martial Dao master, he was not the kind of person who was particularly weak. However, among the people Chu Xiu had offended, almost none of them were weak. They were all martial arts grandmasters from large sects, and some were even famous figures on the Fengyan list. This made things very awkward for Lu Hongye. He could barely defeat any of them. It would be good enough if he could guarantee that he would not die, let alone help Chu Xiu. On the other hand, there were many people from the Eastern Qi sect. Wang Shuangjuan and Qi Jian, who represented the crown prince, looked at each other and directly charged at Chu Xiu. How could the three of them be no match for Chu Xiu when they worked together? The two long swords on Wang Shuangjuan's back shone with a scorching yang aura. Different from the pure yang qi of the Chunyang Dao sect, the sword qi on Wang Shuangjuan's long swords was mixed with a trace of heat, and the power to suppress demons and kill evil was also extremely powerful. Qi Jian pinched a Buddhist seal with his hand, and thousands of rays of Buddhist light burst out, turning into a handprint and slapped at Chu Xiu. One of them was Shunbai, who was no weaker than a martial arts grandmaster, and the other two were not unknown in the Jianghu. The pressure on Chu Xiu instantly increased to the extreme. It was a joke in the Jianghu that martial arts grandmasters besieged a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and men realm. However, based on what Chu Xiu had done, who would really regard him as a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and men realm? Therefore, Wang Shuangjuan and the others did not feel the slightest burden when they attacked. In an instant, instead of retreating, Chu Xiu advanced. The human puppet appeared in front of Qi Jian, and the incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao crawled out. It opened its mouth, and the power of the hungry ghost devoured everything. The endless Buddhist light was swallowed into its mouth. Not only was it not affected, but the incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao even burped, and it looked at Qi Jian even more greedily. At the same time, Chu Xiu performed the mental demon rotation technique to the extreme. The soul-suppressing Hades song was played, and waves of evil power rushed at Wang Shuangjuan and Shunbai, causing them to groan and slow down. Neither of them had cultivated primordial soul secret techniques, so their resistance to primordial soul secret techniques like the soul-suppressing Hades song was weaker. Taking advantage of this moment of delay, Chu Xiu pinched the formless sealing handprint, and the universe reversed. Under the handprint, everything was twisting and spinning. The ring turned into Mount Meru, the universe and the 5 skandhas were all empty. Within the formless sealing handprint, all power dissipated. From Chu Xiu's point of view, he had expended a lot of energy to attack just now. However, from the perspective of others, it had only been a short moment. In reality, however, it had been extremely dangerous. After repelling 3 people at the same time, just as Chu Xiu was about to heave a sigh of relief, a ripple appeared in the air. It was a very small ripple, but Chu Xiu suddenly noticed it. In that instant, Chu Xiu did not hesitate. He used the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme. What he saw was a shockingly powerful sword qi. No one could have imagined that such a powerful sword qi would actually be hidden under such a seemingly inconspicuous and weak fluctuation. If it wasn't for Chu Xiu's incomparably sensitive perception and the heaven's sun gazing at air, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Just as Chu Xiu was about to use the speed of the internal binding handprint to dodge in advance, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the sword qi. The long sword lightly pointed as if to break a surface. The tip of the sword shattered the ripple in the void. In an instant, the sword qi was like a mirror, shattering with a loud bang. The figure in front of the sword qi was Fang Qixiao, who was holding a long sword and had a rare solemn expression on his face. An angry voice said, "Fang Qixiao, what the hell do you want? The sect has already confined you, yet you still dare to run out?" The head of the Xingjian Hall of Sword King City, Invisible Sword, Bai Qian, appeared from the side with an angry face. In Jianghu, only Bai Qian's invisible sword could be so dangerous. The sword qi was hidden in the void, making it impossible for people to detect it. If it wasn't for Chu Xiu's sun gazing at air, this invisible sword would have fallen on his body before Chu Xiu could have noticed it. Sword King City itself had enmity with Chu Xiu. Among the disciples of Sword King City, Great Light Sword Fei Mo, who was on the Longhu list in the previous generation, had been crippled by Chu Xiu. After all, Fang Qixiao and Chu Xiu had become friends. Although Sword King City was overbearing, they would still give Chu Xiu face and let this matter pass. However, Chu Xiu had openly killed Lin Kaiyun in front of everyone in the Minor Fan Heaven. This was something that Sword King City absolutely could not tolerate. Putting aside the fact that Lin Kaiyun was an outstanding figure in Sword King City, second only to 7th Young Master Fang, just the fact that Chu Xiu had repeatedly killed the people of Sword King City was something that Sword King City could not tolerate. Given Sword King City's style of doing things, they didn't care whether Lin Kaiyun wanted to kill Chu Xiu first and was killed by Chu Xiu. According to Sword King City's way of doing things, even if Chu Xiu was the victim, he couldn't kill Lin Kaiyun first. It was up to Sword King City to decide whether Lin Kaiyun should be killed or punished for his crimes. Chu Xiu was not qualified to judge him. However, Sword King City had encountered some problems after the Minor Fan Heaven, so they hadn't had the time to look for trouble with Chu Xiu. Moreover, Fang Qixiao had also been secretly obstructing them, so Sword King City had put this matter aside for the time being. However, Chu Xiu's identity had been exposed this time, which was equivalent to courting death. Sword King City had no reason to not take action. Although Fang Qixiao had also been involved this time, Sword King City couldn't let Fang Qixiao do as he pleased. Therefore, Sword King City had directly punished Fang Qixiao with confinement. Before this matter was resolved, Fang Qixiao was not allowed to come out of seclusion. However, Bai Qian hadn't expected that Fang Qixiao would dare to disobey the sect's order and come out of seclusion to stop Chu Xiu. Chapter 659. Fang Qixiao stood in front of Bai Qian. Actually, he was also very conflicted. He didn't have many friends, but Chu Xiu was one of them. Therefore, Fang Qixiao really didn't want Chu Xiu to have a conflict with Sword King City. If an ordinary small sect had a disciple like Fang Qixiao, then they would definitely listen to Fang Qixiao's orders. This small grudge could be completely forgotten. But what kind of sect was Sword King City? It was one of the 5 great sword sects that had dominated the Western Desert for over 1,000 years. It even had the strength to contend for the position of the leader of the 5 great sword sections. The sect had countless experts. For a sect like Sword King City, face was very important. Sword King City could listen to Fang Qixiao as much as possible in trivial matters. However, Fang Qixiao's words weren't very useful when it came to matters related to Sword King City's face. Sword King City had confined Fang Qixiao because they were afraid that he would fall into a dilemma. However, they hadn't expected that Fang Qixiao would still come. Looking at Bai Qian, Fang Qixiao shook his head and said, "See, Chief, I won't talk about right and wrong. If you make a move against Brother Chu and he doesn't die, then he will definitely become a great enemy of Sword King City in the future. I don't understand one thing. Is it worth it to make a great enemy for the sake of face? You've seen Brother Chu's strength and potential. Whether it's a friend or an enemy, I dare say that his future achievements won't be any weaker than Zhang Qingzhen. Bai Qian said coldly, so what? If you hadn't stopped him, Chu Xiu would have died a long time ago. How could he have a future? Fang Qishao smiled bitterly and said, Brother Chu won't die. See chief, please stop. Just give me face, alright? Others might not know about the heaven's sun gazing at air, but Fang Qishao, who also cultivated the karma sword Dao, knew about it. Even if he hadn't intercepted Bai Qian's sword earlier, Chu Xiu would still have been able to dodge it by relying on his strange Dao of karma cultivation technique. Fang Qishao had taken the initiative to intercept Bai Qian because he wanted to smooth things over. Now that he had helped Chu Xiu stop Bai Qian, this matter would be over, and Sword King City would have one less enemy in the future. Although Fang Qishao was usually unruly, it didn't mean that he didn't understand the ways of the world. However, it seemed like Bai Qian didn't see through his hidden meaning. He thought Bai Qian was protecting Chu Xiu. In fact, Fang Qishao was also protecting Sword King City. After cultivating the karma sword Dao for such a long time, although Fang Qishao didn't know anything about divination, he had a vague understanding of karma. Or perhaps it could be said that it was a very strange feeling. He could sense that if Sword King City really became mortal enemies with Chu Xiu, then the consequences for Sword King City wouldn't be good. Bai Qian waved his hand and said coldly, Seventh young master, I can let you do as you please. I didn't even punish you for stealing the sword embryo of the Xinjiang Hall to drink. However, this matter is related to the face of Sword King City, and it's not something you can interfere in. Regardless of whether it's me or the other seniors of Sword King City, we didn't force you to fight Chu Xiu. We did it for the sake of your face and not to put you in a dilemma. But you shouldn't be unable to differentiate good from bad. Bai Qian's words were harsh enough. Over the years, the seniors of Sword King City had only reprimanded Fang Qishao because of his misbehavior. They had never said such harsh words. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Brother Fang, please step aside. The sect is the sect and you are you. I will naturally resolve my enmity with Sword King City. You don't need to interfere. Moreover, you've seen the situation. There are so many people who want to kill me, so Bai Qian won't make a difference. Honestly speaking, Chu Xiu was very touched that Fang Qishao was willing to go this far. Most people in the Jianghu had many friends and brothers. But in fact, apart from independent cultivators, most people prioritized their sects or families. Fang Qishao was sandwiched between him and the sect. It was already good enough that he didn't choose to stand on the sect's side and become enemies with him. Now that Fang Qishao was standing on Bai Qian's side, it was already benevolent of him. Fang Qishao shook his head. He didn't say anything to Chu Xiu. Instead, he took a deep breath and said to Bai Qian, Chief, since you want to restore Sword King City's face, then I'll do it. Brother Chu killed a young disciple of Sword King City. As a senior of Sword King City, if you join forces with others to attack Brother Chu, the people of the Jianghu will say that Sword King City is bullying the weak and doesn't follow the rules. After saying that, Fang Qishao glanced at Wang Shuangjuan and the others and said, Others might be shameless, but my Sword King City won't. Wang Shuangjuan revealed a trace of anger on his face. Even Qi Jian, who always had a smile on his face, gradually disappeared. However, he didn't dare to say anything. Wang Shuangjuan was just a rogue cultivator. Even if he was now the crown prince's subordinate, it didn't mean that he was a member of the Eastern Qi imperial court. Qi Jian might be strong, but his great wisdom temple couldn't compare to Sword King City. In fact, it couldn't even compare to one of the 4 major sword halls of Sword King City. Even if Fang Qishao ridiculed them in front of their faces, they didn't dare to say anything. On the contrary, Xunbai didn't care. Since Xunbai came out of seclusion and saw the hypocrisy of the world and the death of his master, his mentality had changed a lot. If it was the previous Xunbai, he would definitely seek revenge on Chu Xiu after coming out of seclusion. He would fight one-on-one fairly and kill Chu Xiu to wash away the humiliation. But now, Xunbai only cared about the results and didn't care about the process. As long as he could kill Chu Xiu and help Azure Wave Sword Sect gain prestige, he didn't mind besieging Chu Xiu. Bai Qian frowned and said, What do you mean? Fang Qishao said in a solemn voice, I'll go have a one-on-one battle with Brother Chu. Regardless of victory or defeat, this matter will be considered completely settled. Bai Qian frowned and said, You want to go easy? Fang Qishao's expression was solemn as he said, Seat master, don't worry. I won't go easy on this kind of thing. If I have the slightest bit of mercy, can't Chief Master still not see it? Seeing Fang Qishao's appearance, Bai Qian could only nod and said, All right, as you wish then. In fact, Bai Qian was still more willing to make a move directly and kill Chu Xiu. It wasn't that he didn't care about the reputation of bullying the weak, but in this kind of situation, no one would treat Chu Xiu as a junior martial artist. However, looking at Fang Qishao's current intentions, if Bai Qian insisted on making a move, Fang Qishao might cause some trouble. So, Bai Qian decided to just let him be. Bai Qian had watched Fang Qishao grow up in Sword King City, so he knew what kind of character Fang Qishao had. On the surface, Fang Qishao was always laughing and joking all day long. He didn't even have the dignity of an eldest senior brother in Sword King City. However, once he became serious, he would be stubborn to the extreme, and even 9 bulls couldn't pull him back. Wang Shuangjuan and the others frowned. Fang Qishao wanted to fight Chu Xiu? However, it didn't matter. Their goal was to kill Chu Xiu and destroy the Guanzhong torture room. If they couldn't kill Chu Xiu for the time being, then they could just kill someone else. Therefore, Wang Shuangjuan and the others subconsciously looked in the direction of Chu Wuji's group, ready to lend a hand. But at this time, Fang Qishao suddenly said, "First seat, help me stop them. If I say it's fair, then it must be fair. If they go to deal with someone else and cause Chu Xiu to be distracted, then wouldn't I become an accomplice? That's not fair." Bai Qian nodded indifferently. Sword King City's position wasn't that firm. From the beginning, Sword King City didn't come here to kill devil. It was purely to resolve personal grievances. The fate of the Yinma clan and the existence of the Guanzhong torture room weren't Sword King City's concern. Wang Shuangjuan angrily said, "Isn't your Sword King City a bit too overbearing? You won't kill Chu Xiu, but you won't allow us to kill other Devil Dao villains." Bai Qian sneered and said, "Are you the first person to know that my Sword King City is overbearing? If you think you have the strength to challenge Sword King City, then fine, I'll accompany you. Just now Chu Xiu fought 1 against 3. I also want to see what it feels like to fight 1 against 3. Wang Shuangjuan and Qi Jian's faces turned red with anger. As Sword King City's first seat, Bai Qian naturally wasn't weak. But they weren't nobodies either, so they might be able to defeat him. But the other side had used Sword King City to suppress them. That was a bit too shameless. Unfortunately, they didn't dare to challenge Sword King City. Turning around, Fang Qishao looked at Chu Xiu and sighed. But then he smiled and said, "Brother Chu, you should know that I've wanted to fight you for a long time. After all, there are only a few people in Jianghu who have cultivated Karma Dao to our level. I'm not familiar with Li Feilian. Moreover, his throwing knives are meant to take people's lives when they leave their sheaths. But I'm too familiar with you, so I'm too embarrassed to fight him. But now I finally have the chance." Fang Qishao unsheathed his sword and looked at Chu Xiu with a solemn expression. "Brother Chu, I won't hold back this time." Holding the heavenly demon dance in his hand, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Me too." Everyone had a competitive heart. Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao were indeed friends, but that didn't mean that they didn't have such competitive hearts. Friends like Mo Tianlin and Xia Xiaolu, whose strength was much lower than Chu Xiu's, were convinced by Chu Xiu. But Fang Qishao was different. Fang Qishao was happy for Chu Xiu that he could reach his current strength, but at the same time Fang Qishao didn't think that he was weaker than Chu Xiu. Fang Qishao stabbed out with his sword. Although his sword seemed light, every time it vibrated, it seemed to conform to some kind of law between heaven and earth. With a light tap of his sword, Chu Xiu instantly felt as though his surroundings had been locked down. Everything in the world was a sword. No matter which direction he attacked from, the force of the sword would rain down like a torrential storm. After not seeing him for a long time, Fang Qishao's sword Dao had taken another step forward. Chapter 660. Ever since Xiao Fan Tian, Fang Qishao did not continue to roam the underworld. Instead, he chose to return to Sword King City to cultivate in seclusion. Xiao Fan Tian was an opportunity for a young warrior like Chu Xiu. It was an opportunity for his strength to advance by leaps and bounds. Not only had Chu Xiu obtained great benefits from Xiao Fan Tian, but Fang Qishao had also benefited a lot from it. Fang Qishao's comprehension of the Tao of Karma had not only increased greatly, but the most obvious improvement was in his control of power. There was no sword chi in the surroundings, but as long as Chu Xiu moved, he would immediately fall into the endless roar of sword chi. Even Shun Bai stared unblinkingly at the seventh young master Fang's attack. To him, this was also a realm that he could not reach. Although Shun Bai had learned the ancestral innumerable swords, he had only achieved minor success. The reason why he had such strength now was mostly due to the ancestral innumerable swords. He was not like the seventh young master Fang, who had an extreme understanding of swordsmanship. Before Shen Bai came out to roam the underworld and was crippled by Chu Xiu, Fang Qishao was already the strongest among the young generation in Sword King City. Even among the young generation in the underworld, if he said he was the second strongest, no one would dare to say they were the first. At this moment, no one in the young generation could surpass him in the sword principle. Chu Xiu stared at Fang Qishao and suddenly smiled. "Brother Fang, don't blame me for not reminding you. When it comes to a real fight, my trump card has never been Heaven's Sun gazing at air. I'm afraid you will be disappointed if you only want to experience my Heaven's Sun gazing at air." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's hands quickly formed seals. The seals of the fast and slow 9 words formula were formed by him in an instant. They were almost like afterimages and their speed was extremely fast. The 9 seals combined into one, and boundless Buddhist light bloomed around Chu Xiu. The radiance was dazzling and the 9 great seals were like a wheel, spinning around Chu Xiu's body without stopping, crushing down on 7th young master Fang. In an instant, countless strands of sword chi burst out, but they were all shattered by the power of the 9 seals fusing into one. Fang Qishao's long sword lightly tapped out, each sword strike locking onto the weakest spot of Chu Xiu's seal arts. Karma was intertwined, and each sword strike shattered a seal art. The 9 seals were unleashed at the same time. Fang Qishao's sword of karma was unleashed to the extreme, and he shattered the 9 seals in a row. However, his hands were trembling slightly. Looking at Chu Xiu in shock, Fang Qishao said gloomily, "You learned from Zhong Xian. Oh, you're even more abnormal than Zhong Xian." In the past, when Fang Qishao was ranked 3rd on the Longhu leaderboard, he had actually fought with both Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. There was no need to mention Zhang Qingzhen as he was a monster among monsters. To be able to use extreme speed and technique to break the sword of karma, Zhang Qingzhen was probably the only one in the entire pugilistic world who could do that. As for Zhong Xian, Fang Qishao was feeling very helpless. Fang Qishao's sword of karma could indeed pierce Zhong Xian, to the extent that Zhong Xian could not be bothered to block or defend himself. However, even if they were to clash head-on with brute force, and even to the extent of exchanging injuries for injuries, Fang Qishao was still beaten to a pulp. If he were to pierce Zhong Xian with his sword, Zhong Xian might be fine. However, if he were to be hit by Zhong Xian's Wisdom King seal, he would probably vomit blood on the spot. Now that he was facing Chu Xiu, Fang Qishao had a feeling that he was facing a strengthened version of Zhong Xian. Not only was his defense extremely shocking, but his explosive power was also extremely strong. Chu Xiu smiled and did not say anything. In an instant, the Buddhist light turned into a torrential demonic aura. He slashed out with the heaven demon dance in his hand, filled with hatred. The demonic devoured the world. The power of the hatred saber was almost completely controlled by Chu Xiu. Other than the fact that it could not be like the real hatred saber, which could affect the opponent's hatred intensely, its power was almost the same as the real hatred saber. However, Chu Xiu did not need to use his mental strength to suppress it, so the consumption was very low. As Fang Qishao stabbed out with his sword, there seemed to be an indescribable connection between him and Chu Xiu's saber. No matter where Chu Xiu's saber slashed at, it seemed like it could be blocked by Fang Qishao. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly shone with a divine light. The power of the Heaven's Sun gazing at air was also unleashed by him to the extreme. In an instant, Fang Qishao's long sword stopped abruptly. The karmic connection had been completely messed up by Chu Xiu. Using the Tao of Karma to fight against karma was the best way to deal with it. Fang Qishao's sword was the cause, and when it landed on Chu Xiu's body, it was the effect. However, right now, Chu Xiu was forcibly seeing through this karma. He used the Heaven's Sun gazing at air to change this karma, forcing Fang Qishao to change his sword stance again. However, it was still suppressed and seen through by Chu Xiu. Although this feeling was extremely stifling, it was extremely beneficial for both Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao. Previously, in the arena before the battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain, Chu Xiu had fought with Fang Qishao using the Tao of Karma. However, at that time, Chu Xiu was slightly weaker than Fang Qishao, so in the end, Chu Xiu was the one who benefited. Now, in this clash of the Tao of Karma, it was both sides who benefited. Bai Qian also saw this scene and nodded slightly. No matter why Fang Qishao came this time, as long as he could improve in this battle, it would be a good thing. However, in the eyes of others, the battle between Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao was extremely awkward. They could not even understand the changes in their moves, including martial Dao grandmasters like Wang Shuangjuan and Qi Jian. They had to admit that young talents like Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao had mastered some things that ordinary martial Dao grandmasters did not have. Once such talents stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, their cultivation base would definitely soar. Ying Bailu was also watching the battle carefully at the back. However, after watching for a while, he sighed deeply. In this generation of Jianghu, there were too many amazing talents, far more than in other eras. Zhang Qingjin, who had condensed the Thunder Golden Core, only appeared once in 1,000 years. Chu Xiu, who stirred up the Jianghu with his own strength. Zhong Xian, who could use the Bright King Seal to evolve thousands of techniques. And Fang Qi Xiao, the #1 sword Dao cultivator of the younger generation in front of him. It was both a blessing and a misfortune to be born in the same era as them. Uncle Fu, the old butler of the Ying clan, stood behind Ying Bailu. He had watched Ying Bailu grow up, so he naturally knew what Ying Bailu was thinking. Uncle Fu smiled and said, "Don't be discouraged, young master. In this age of martial Dao, everyone can shine. Just look at Chu Xiu and Fang Qi Xiao now, but you don't know that thousands of young martial artists in the Jianghu are also watching you." Ying Bailu smiled and did not say anything. He was just sighing. He was Ying Bailu, and he was not someone who would be so easily discouraged. Just as Chu Xiu and Fang Qi Xiao were fighting fiercely, the situation behind them changed. Bai Qian could stop Wang Shuangjuan and the other two, but he could not stop the others, nor could he control the overall situation. Chu Wuji was already at a disadvantage in his fight with Shi Yunzi. It was not that his cultivation was inferior to Shi Yunzi's, but that the pure Yang sword's destructive power was too great. This was, after all, Patriarch Lu's sword, the pure Yang sword, which was ranked 5th in the world-famous sword manual. With Shi Yunzi's extremely pure Yang energy, the sword's power to suppress all evil and slay all devils was unleashed to the extreme. However, Chu Wuji could still hold on for the time being, and Mr. Lu and Su Yangzi were also evenly matched. Lu Hongye, on the other hand, did not fare so well. As the master of the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa, Qing Tingshan's cultivation, weapon, and time to break through to martial Dao Grandmaster far surpassed Lu Hongye. Therefore, it was already not easy for Lu Hongye to withstand more than 10 moves from Qing Tingshan. In the end, Qing Tingshan shattered the weapon in his hand with a single strike, and he was seriously injured by the sword qi. He vomited blood and was sent flying. However, Qing Tingshan did not choose to go after Lu Hongye. Instead, he turned around and attacked Chu Wuji. He did not know Lu Hongye. He only thought that Lu Hongye was a new martial Dao Grandmaster from the Yinma clan, the kind with very weak strength. Killing him would not affect his reputation or the actual impact. However, if he killed Chu Wuji, who was a famous figure in the Yinma clan, his reputation would be even greater. Therefore, Qing Tingshan directly attacked Chu Wuji with his sword, forcing him into a dangerous situation together with Shi Yunzi. Shi Yunzi frowned slightly at Qing Tingshan's sudden intervention. He did not like to gang up on someone, but Shi Yunzi was not stupid enough to offend Qing Tingshan just for the sake of fairness. He was just not in a hurry to attack. The only one who could maintain an absolute advantage at the scene was Mei Qinglian. Her great art of beauty affected one's primordial spirit. When she was fighting with Xiahou Zhen, the latter was even affected to the extent that he could not concentrate his primordial spirit, which made him feel extremely aggrieved. However, right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind Mei Qinglian. Powerful earth energy condensed in a palm that contained a majestic power of blood, restraining Mei Qinglian's enchantment of the enchantment of the enchantment of women. This sudden attack was not something that Mei Qinglian expected at all. Although she turned into a black mist and dissipated after sensing the power, she still could not completely avoid the power of the palm. She was pushed back several steps and a mouthful of blood flowed from her mouth. The one who sneak attacked Mei Qinglian from behind was Luo Jinyan, the great ancestor of the Luo clan. Luo Jinyan hated Chu Xiu to the bone. He was the one who took away Luo Feiheng, messed up the marriage between the Luo clan and the Ying clan, and made the Luo clan lose face. However, Luo Jinyan also knew that his strength was probably the weakest among these people. Although his seniority was high, his strength was really not that great. Therefore he did not attack and Mei Qinglian and the others did not pay attention to it. There were actually many cultivators on the side of the Eastern Qi Alliance who did not attack, such as Yu Qifeng of the White Tiger Hall, the people of the Mo clan, Qi Yuanli of the Wind Sweeping Tower, and so on. Therefore, everyone subconsciously ignored the great ancestor of the Luo clan. They did not expect him to suddenly attack and successfully injure Mei Qinglian. Chapter 661. As Mei Qinglian was seriously injured, Chu Wuji was in danger of being besieged, and Chu Xiu's subordinates were also at a disadvantage, Xiahou Zhen could not help but smile. All of this was not much different from what he had expected. The strength of Chu Xiu's subordinates was so little, and his only backer Wei Shuya had also fought with Su Yun in northern Yen. From the looks of it, he should have been heavily injured and could not fight anymore. As for the experts of the Yinma clan hiding in the dark, Xiahou Zhen was not worried. At this point, the experts of the Yinma clan and many righteous sects also had a tacit understanding. Both sides would not use too much power so as not to cause a large-scale war between the righteous and evil sects. Through the power that Chu Xiu had displayed, everyone was able to see how strong the hidden devil lineage was now. Naturally, there was no need to put all of their power on the line. If the Yinma clan could not help but fight, it meant that Chu Xiu could not survive this time, and it also meant that the Yinma clan was actually still weak. In this case, they could go back to the dark and continue to live. The other experts of the righteous martial world would also fight. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao were still fighting in that extremely awkward way, affecting each other's way of cause and effect, and affecting each other's attacks. Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao both saw the movement on the other side. Fang Qishao could not help saying, "Brother Chu, you'd better stop and leave the Guanzhong torture room with your people. As long as you hide in the dark, the righteous martial world will not completely kill you. If you continue to delay, all your subordinates will die." In Fang Qishao's impression, although Chu Xiu was extremely ruthless, he was actually good to his own people. However, now Chu Xiu was stubborn, which was a bit unwise in Fang Qishao's opinion. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Stop? It's already come to this and I can't stop now. Besides, my people haven't arrived yet." Fang Qishao was slightly stunned. At this moment, the situation below changed again. Xiahou Zhen was just about to join forces with Luo Junyan to kill Mei Qinglian once and for all. But at this moment, a loud shout suddenly sounded, and an extremely powerful aura came from behind him. It was mixed with a tyrannical and powerful devil qi. Even Xiahou Zhen was shocked by the power of this aura. The spirit control art used the power of the essence soul to affect the world. In the blink of an eye, Xiahou Zhen was surrounded by astral winds. His speed was pushed to the limit as he dodged the attack. A loud boom rang out. A gigantic halberd, shining with demonic energy, smashed into the ground behind Xiahou Zhen. The ground was covered in cracks and a huge crater that was over 30 meters wide had been blasted out. One could imagine just how terrifying the power of the attack was and what would happen if it hit a person's body. "Lu Fengxian. It's actually you?" Xiahou Zhen shouted in disbelief. The one who attacked just now was Lu Fengxian, who was holding an unparalleled weapon, and her aura had climbed to the peak of the unity of nature and human realm. Moreover, there were also Shui Wuxiang and the other 3 people who came with Lu Fengxian. The 4 of them had used some secret method during this time, and their strength had also been raised to the early stage of the unity of nature and human realm. Although there were only 4 of them, these 4 guys were once powerhouses of the ancient times. Their strength was between the real pellet state and the real fire spirit refinement state. Their control of power was far from comparable to the martial artists of the same rank. As soon as they joined the battle, they killed several martial artists of the same rank. Carrying halberd, Lu Fengxian waved at Chu Xiu, indicating that she wasn't too late. Chu Xiu showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. He knew that Lu Fengxian would definitely come. It was just a matter of time. In Xiaofen Heaven, Lu Fengxian fought against Zhong Xian, and she also gained a lot of benefits. The growth of her strength was also very obvious. At least at this time, when he used the unparalleled weapon, his own consumption was reduced a lot. Xiahou Zhen looked at Lu Fengxian and said in a low voice, "Lu Fengxian, you should know the identity of Chu Xiu. He lied to you. Although you are good friends with him, you are not a demonic cultivator. Why do you want to help him get involved in this mess? Do you know that if you stand on the side of Chu Xiu today, in the future, you will be standing on the opposite side of the entire martial arts world's righteous path?" Lu Fengxian shook her head indifferently and said, "I have already guessed Brother Chu's identity. As for the opposite side of the martial arts world's righteous path, I seem to have never stood on the side of the martial arts world's righteous path. Okay, don't talk nonsense. Brother Chu's situation is critical, and I can't let you continue to be presumptuous. I have long wanted to experience the spirit commanding technique of the Xiahou family." As soon as her voice fell, Lu Fengxian directly attacked Xiahou Zhen. The unparalleled halberd in her hand slashed down with a monstrous demonic qi, and its power was extremely powerful. Facing Lu Fengxian, Xiahou Zhen also had a headache. Among the younger generation of the martial arts world, Lu Fengxian was indeed not as good as Chu Xiu, Fang Qishao, and the others, but this did not mean that Lu Fengxian was weak. He was also born in the wilderness. He relied on his own strength to enter the Longhu list, and obtain the inheritance of the devil god Lv1Ho. At this moment he was holding an extremely fierce divine weapon, and its power could be said to be extremely terrifying. It was not difficult for him to fight a martial arts grandmaster head-on. Although the spirit commanding technique of the Xiahou family was magical, in the face of an existence like Lu Fengxian who completely relied on strength to fight him head-on, he still felt a little helpless. And this time, Lu Fengxian only brought 4 people with her. Although they were not weak, they could not affect the situation of the battle. But it did not matter. There were more people behind. A woman in a white tight-fitting warrior suit with a blood-red spear in her hand rode over from afar. Behind her was a large number of martial artists. Not to say there were thousands, but there were hundreds of them. And among these hundreds of people, there were almost no weaklings. The physical invulnerability realm was already the weakest existence. This extremely heroic woman in white was Luo Feiheng. In his previous life, after Luo Feiheng left the Luo family, he established the Bu-Er Palace, and he was still doing well in the martial arts world. Now she was helping Chu Xiu take charge of the 9-branch hall. With the support of Chu Xiu's reputation, and Mo Yezi secretly providing her with a lot of help, the 9-branch hall had already developed to the point that even Chu Xiu himself could not recognize it. Luo Feiheng brought many people with her. Although their strength was not comparable to the strength of Shui Wuxiang and the other 3 that Lu Fengxian brought, they could not hold up against the 9-branch hall. With the addition of these people from the 9-branch hall, the tide of the battle turned in an instant. The ones who were struggling were actually them. Leaping off the horse, Luo Feiheng pointed the blood spear red kite at Luo Junyan. A sinister smile appeared on her beautiful face, but her eyes were filled with disgust and killing intent. Old ancestor, long time no see. Why aren't you staying in seclusion in the Luo family? What are you doing here? Are you tired of living? Do you want to die faster? Luo Junyan looked at Luo Feiheng with the same gaze. He only spat out 2 words coldly, evil spawn. As a disciple of the Luo family, he did not care about the interests of the Luo family at all. He was selfish and even almost destroyed the ancestral hall of the Luo family. If such a person was not an evil spawn, then what was? Luo Feiheng laughed coldly and said, evil spawn? The Luo family has already deteriorated to such an extent. Luo Junyan, as the old ancestor of the Luo family, you have contributed the most. Although the Luo family treated me unjustly, I can't be heartless to them. Getting rid of you might even save the Luo family. As soon as he finished speaking, Luo Feiheng directly charged at Luo Junyan with the blood spear red kite in his hand. After Xiao Fantian, Luo Feiheng also stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm. But to fight a martial Dao grandmaster just after attaining unity of heaven and man, there were not many people in the pugilistic world who were as arrogant as Chu Xiu. Now there was also Luo Feiheng. Although Luo Junyan was old, a martial Dao grandmaster was still a martial Dao grandmaster. Luo Feiheng had just stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm, and it was a little too dangerous to fight him. Lu Fengxian gave Shui Wuxiang and Yan Qishao a look and secretly sent them a voice transmission, asking them to protect Luo Feiheng. Although these 2 people were only at the unity of heaven and man realm now, they were still powerful in the past and had countless secret techniques. It would not be a problem for them to support Luo Feiheng at the critical moment and protect their own lives. Among the crowd, Mo Tianlin was actually also there, but he did not have the face to see Chu Xiu. People like Lu Fengxian and Luo Feiheng were helping Chu Xiu, but as a friend he had to stand on the opposite side of Chu Xiu. He could not even change Bai Chen's plan like Fang Qishao did, which made Mo Tianlin feel a little ashamed. Seeing this scene, Mo Tianlin could not help but say to a tall and imposing old man beside him, "Old ancestor, you have seen Brother Chu's strength. As long as he doesn't die this time, he will definitely soar to the sky. Our Mo clan has always been neutral, so why should we listen to Xiaoho's order and attack the Guanzhong torture room? Old ancestor, if you help Chu Xiu now, it will definitely be like sending charcoal in snowy weather, and you will definitely gain the favor of the Yinma clan." The Mo clan's old ancestor Mo Qingming was actually not too old. Although he was past the prime of his life, his qi and blood had not started to decline on a large scale, so he still looked very young, only in his early 50s. When he heard Mo Tianlin's words, he could not help but shake his head and say, "Tianlin, I know what you mean. You are good friends with Chu Xiu, so you want the Mo clan to help Chu Xiu. However, there are some things that you cannot be capricious about. In the pugilistic world, one cannot do as he pleases. Everything must be done with the clan in mind. The current situation is not clear yet, so the most I can do is not to add insult to injury. I also know that sending charcoal in snowy weather will bring great benefits, but it will not be worth it if it causes me to freeze to death. Learn from that good friend of yours, Xie Xiaolu. He has a good relationship with Chu Xiu, but the World Alliance's Qin Qingdi has not made a move either. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Old ancestor, you are wrong. Xie Xiaolu told me before that he will not sit by and do nothing, so Qin Qingdi will definitely make a move. Otherwise, why hasn't a single power from West Chu come?" Chapter 662. Mo Tianlin was right. Xie Xiaolu looked cold, but as long as it was a friend he recognized, he would treat them sincerely. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian were his friends, so Xie Xiaolu, who rarely asked for help from Qin Qingdi, finally spoke. Qin Qingdi did not refuse his disciple's request. He just took Xie Xiaolu to the only path from West Chu to the Guanzhong torture room. He set up a shed and sat there drinking tea. After a few sips, he felt it was not enough, so he had Xie Xiaolu go to a town a dozen miles away to buy 2 jars of wine. 2 days later, 2 groups of people happened to meet on the road. One was from the Jailing Dong family, the other was from the Ba Mountain Sword sect. The Jailing Dong family had a grudge with Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian because of the mountain opening ceremony, while the Ba Mountain Sword sect had an even greater grudge with Chu Xiu. Last time, Chu Xiu had fought his way to the gates of the Ba Mountain Sword sect and almost killed Qin Jiankong. So this time, when they heard that Chu Xiu was in trouble, the Jailing Dong family and the Ba Mountain Sword sect could not find a reason not to kick them when they were down. They had not communicated before, and it was a pure coincidence that they had met this time. But since they met, after communicating their intentions, the two prepared to bring people to the Guanzhong torture room. But before they could rejoice for long, they saw Qin Qingdi sitting in the middle of the road, drinking wine under the shed. The moment they saw Qin Qingdi, both the Jailing Dong family's patriarch Dong Qikuan and the Ba Mountain Sword sect's Qin Jiankong changed expressions. In all of West Chu, no one wanted to interact with Qin Qingdi because he was not someone they could interact with. Qin Qingdi held his wine bowl and glanced at them. He sneered and pointed at Dong Qikuan. "You go back to jailing?" He pointed at Qin Jiankong and said, "You go back to Mount Ba." In front of the many disciples of the Jailing Dong family and Ba Mountain Sword sect, Qin Qingdi told them to go back. This kind of humiliation caused the two to blush. They were furious but did not dare to act. They were well aware of Qin Qingdi's personality. Even if the two of them joined forces, how many punches from Qin Qingdi could they block? Seeing that the two of them still hadn't left, Qin Qingdi narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I told you to scram, didn't you hear me? I don't want to repeat myself." Qin Qingdi stood up and took a step forward, causing the ground to rumble. It was like an earth dragon had turned over, and the might it emanated caused the expressions of Dong Qikuan and Qin Jiankong to change abruptly. Without another word, Dong Qikuan immediately turned around and left with his people. During the mountain opening ceremony, Dong Qikuan had been threatened by Qin Qingdi by the neck. His fear of Qin Qingdi came from the bottom of his heart. Qin Qingdi was a madman with no scruples. He really dared to kill him. Seeing that Dong Qikuan had left, Qin Jiankong did not dare to face the famous Qin Qingdi alone. He also left dejectedly. With just one sentence, he had scared away 2 martial arts grandmasters, 2 top forces in the martial world. Qin Qingdi's power was already quite shocking. Xie Xiaolu said from the side, "Master, aren't you going to the Guanzhong torture room to help Chu Xiu? Brother Lu Fengxian is also there." Qin Qingdi sat down again and poured himself a bowl of wine. He softly said, "That brat Chu Xiu is more cunning than you guys. He knows what he is doing, so you don't need to worry about him. As for that kid Lu Fengxian, he's an honest man, but he's had a lot of luck and opportunities, and he's also met friends like you, so he hasn't suffered much. It's his own choice to help Chu Xiu, and we don't need to worry for him. Helping that brat Chu Xiu block the West Chu people is already a very benevolent person. As for going to the Guanzhong torture room, that is absolutely impossible. It's not that I don't want to help, it's that I can't help. The relationship between the righteous and demonic paths is very delicate right now. My world alliance has always been neutral, so if I go now, which side do you think I will stand on? Moreover, you have also seen how many experts the righteous and demonic paths have produced in such a long time. There is only Wei Shuya and Su Yun. Wei Shuya only helped because he is Chu Xiu's backer. I heard that he is also the person who supports Chu Xiu the most in the Hidden Devil sect. And Su Yun only helped because Chu Xiu brazenly attacked the Northern Yen. As the largest sect in the northern Yin, the Great Light Temple had to respond. If Chu Xiu had stayed in the Guanzhong torture room, Su Yun wouldn't have helped. Both the righteous and demonic paths are restraining themselves, controlling this matter to a certain extent so that it doesn't become a big deal. Qin Di suddenly stretched out his hand and put his finger into the wine bowl. Immediately, circles of ripples rose and the vibration became stronger and stronger. Finally, with a loud bang, the wine bowl exploded. The current situation is like the wine in this wine bowl. If no one stirs it, it will be calm. No matter how they fight, it will not overflow. On the contrary, if an expert surpassing this level interferes, the biggest possibility is that this wine bowl will explode and no one will have wine to drink. Xie Xiaolu nodded thoughtfully. He suddenly said, "Master, you said that it is not okay if an expert surpassing this level interferes. Are you boasting that you are comparable to an expert in the true fire spirit refining realm?" Slap. Qin Di directly slapped Xie Xiaolu's head, almost slapping him to the ground. Looking up at the sky, Qin Di said indifferently, "So what if you are in the true fire spirit refining realm? If one punch can't kill you, then two punches. The true fire spirit refining realm is like heaven to a junior like you, unattainable. But to me, so what if it is heaven? I can pick the stars with my hand." On the battlefield outside of Guanzhong City, with the addition of Lu Fengxian and Luo Feiheng's people, the situation had finally stabilized. This battle was different from the battle with Northern Yen. Chu Xiu could still choose to launch a sneak attack or use tricks. In this battle, he had really put all his power and connections into it. He was going to fight head-on. Chu Xiu did not know what was going on the West Chu side. He had only sent a message to Xie Xiaolu and asked him for help, but because time was too tight, Xie Xiaolu did not even reply. But Chu Xiu believed that Xie Xiaolu would help him. Moreover, with Qin Di's strength, there was almost no one in the West Chu that could stop him. So, Chu Xiu could rest assured on this side and did not need to worry about the West Chu side. Constantly using the heaven sun gazing at air technique to test attacks with Fang Qi Xiao, this consumed a lot of Chu Xiu's spiritual force. In every instant, both sides were constantly changing their moves, constantly testing each other. It seemed like the fight between the two sides was not intense, but the danger was hidden in the details. With Bai Weiwei watching from the side, Fang Qi Xiao did not hold back at all. Chu Xiu was the same. Although they were friends, they were also experts of the younger generation ranked on the Dragon Tiger list. This battle was not about benefits, but rather to test their own martial arts. Chu Xiu took a deep breath. After fighting for so long, whether it was himself or Fang Qi Xiao, they were completely familiar with each other's changes. It was time for this battle to end. Clenching the heavenly demon dance in his hand, Chu Xiu's aura suddenly changed. The blade momentum became misty and a strange aura was emitted, as if it was affecting the surrounding time and space. In an instant, Chu Xiu seemed to be out of the control of this space. The aura was very strange. Just the beginning of the blade momentum had already attracted everyone's attention. The blade momentum Chu Xiu used was the misty red dust cut of the past Dugu Weiwei. This was a powerful martial arts technique that Chu Xiu could not understand in the past. Even if Chu Xiu temporarily imprinted it in his heart by consuming the power of Taoist connotation and could slowly understand it, Chu Xiu still had not fully mastered it. He could not even use the complete misty red dust cut. So now Chu Xiu's blade was just a bluff. If he forcefully used this blade, he would actually hurt himself first. But it was this starting move that shocked countless people. Not to mention the martial artists in the oneness of heaven and man realm, even the martial Dao grandmasters were shocked by the aura and power emitted by this blade. Fang Qi Xiao knew that Chu Xiu had a lot of trump cards, but he did not expect that Chu Xiu had such a trump card. At this moment, Fang Qi Xiao did not think about resisting at all. Instead, he ran the Karma Sword principle with all his strength and dodged with all his strength. However, at this moment, Fang Qi Xiao suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and a look of horror appeared on his face. What kind of blade technique was this? It was so powerful that he had just used the Karma Dao to deduce it, and it directly backfired. After seeing this, Chu Xiu immediately changed his blade momentum and slashed down with the power of the hatred blade with the heavenly demon dance. It directly forced Fang Qi Xiao to retreat more than 10 steps. Chu Xiu did not continue to attack. He just spread his hands and said to Fang Qi Xiao, "I'm sorry, brother Fang." In fact, strictly speaking, Chu Xiu had won by cheating just now. Fang Qi Xiao's Karma Sword principle was extremely difficult to deal with. In a normal fight, even if Chu Xiu used absolute power to crush Fang Qi Xiao, he would have to expend a lot of energy to do so. Shunbai and the others were still eyeing him covetously. Therefore Chu Xiu could only use a small trick. If he used the red dust ethereal slash, a martial technique that even he could not fully control, as long as Fang Qishao habitually used the karma sword principle to deduce it, he would definitely be backfired. This was also where Chu Xiu's true confidence came from. The karma Dao was the only thing that Fang Qishao could do. Although Chu Xiu also knew the heaven's sun gazing at air, it was not his trump card. Fang Qishao smiled bitterly and said, "There's no need to apologize. I'm not as skilled as others. It seems that the heavens are indeed fair. With how handsome I am, I'm bound to be greatly discounted in other areas." Seeing that Fang Qishao could still talk nonsense at this time, Chu Xiu did not care. Based on Fang Qishao's character, he would not be defeated so easily. However, Chu Xiu suddenly felt that something was wrong. "You're handsome but you're slightly weaker. Would I be ugly if I defeated you?" Chapter 663. The battle between Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao had just ended. At this time, Qi Jian suddenly said to Bai Qian, "Amit Ba. Hallmaster Bai, since you're done, isn't it our turn to make a move? If you continue to obstruct us, does that mean that your Sword King city is prepared to join the hidden devil lineage?" Bai Qian snorted coldly and said, "If you want to make a move, then make a move. However, great monk, you can eat indiscriminately but you can't speak indiscriminately. I know that you have a good relationship with the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, but you're not a member of these two sects." Qi Jian didn't continue to talk nonsense with Bai Qian. Since Bai Qian didn't want to continue to obstruct them, the three of them immediately charged at Chu Xiu with sword in hand, Wang Shuangjuan and Shunbai without the slightest delay. Just now, when Chu Xiu fought against Fang Qishao, although he used a trick to defeat Fang Qishao in the end, he also consumed a lot of strength. At this time, they didn't intend to give Chu Xiu any time to rest and recover his strength. Fang Qishao frowned. These three people were obviously rushing to kill, and they didn't care about any rules. Bai Qian said faintly from the side, "If you don't let me kill Chu Xiu can't escape this situation either. Seventh young master, let's go. Since things have come to this, it's useless for you to wait here." Fang Qishao shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. I feel that Brother Chu can survive this calamity." Bai Qian raised his eyebrows and said, "Why?" Fang Qishao said with a solemn face, "Intuition, a man's intuition." Bai Qian smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't believe in intuition and only believed in what he saw in front of him. Since Fang Qishao didn't want to leave, then so be it. It would be fine as long as he didn't interfere. However, at this moment, the light of the formation suddenly rose from the ground. The killing intent and demonic qi gathered by the countless cultivators fighting and slaughtering on the ground all surged into Chu Xiu's body, causing his body to instantly burn with a black and red demonic flame that soared into the sky. Qi Jian frowned and said, "It's the Kunlun Devil Cult's demon gathering formation. Is this Chu Xiu planning to risk his life?" In the past, the Kunlun Devil Cult dominated the pugilistic world. Some of their martial arts and formations were actually very conspicuous. For example, this demon gathering formation. However, this thing wasn't a powerful formation. Instead, it was something that Kunlun Devil Cult disciples would only use when they were fighting for their lives. They would set up the demon gathering formation in the killing field and condense the devil chi and evil blood chi in the killing field into their own bodies. The more intense the battle, the stronger the devil chi and evil blood chi that could be condensed. Although the formation was carved on the ground, the formation's eye was on the warrior's body. So as long as the warrior didn't die, the demon gathering formation wouldn't be destroyed. The reason why this kind of formation was only used when one was fighting for their lives was because the devil chi and evil blood chi condensed by the demon gathering formation couldn't be controlled. In the early stages, it could indeed bring great power to the user. But in the later stages, the devil chi would gather more and more, making it impossible for the user to control it. In the end, it could even directly cause the person who set up the formation to explode. In the past, when the Kunlun Devil Cult was attacked by many righteous sects, there was a hall where several Devil Dao warriors set up the demon gathering formation together to resist the righteous sect's attack. With the strength of a few people, they blocked 100 people and forcibly held on for an hour. But in the end, because they couldn't control the powerful devil chi, they exploded and died. Now that Chu Xiu had used such a thing as a trump card, it was obvious that he had exhausted his limited abilities. So the three people looked at each other and immediately began to attack wildly. The fiercer their attack, the more devil chi and evil blood chi Chu Xiu would absorb. But this was like drinking poison to quench thirst. Maybe before they killed Chu Xiu would be destroyed by the powerful devil chi and evil blood chi. Qi Jian pinched a Buddhist seal with his hand, and his whole body flashed with a dazzling golden light. The Buddha shadow behind him was hazy, and it fell toward Chu Xiu. Wang Shuangjuan followed behind the sword-wielding man, and the two long swords in her hands with hot gang chi slashed down. The sword chi seemed to burn the space, and wherever it passed, the devil chi was all ignited. The momentum around Shenbai's body also rose to the extreme. Below, whether it was Chu Xiu's men or the warriors of the Eastern Qi Alliance, as long as they were holding a sword, the long swords in their hands were trembling slightly. In the end, those warriors who couldn't control the long swords in their hands could only watch helplessly as the long swords in their hands flew into the air, hovering around Shenbai, mixed with endless sword chi, staring at Chu Xiu. The three of them had already attacked with all their strength in order to push Chu Xiu to the extreme. The harder they pushed, the more frantically Chu Xiu would absorb the devil chi, which was like drinking poison to quench thirst, and the faster he would die. But in the next moment, the expressions of the three changed at the same time. This was somewhat different from what they had expected. The devil chi lingered behind Chu Xiu, and the power of his primordial spirit actually condensed into a hazy devil shadow. The boundless evil chi and devil chi integrated into the devil shadow, making the devil shadow extremely agile, as if a sky devil had descended. Facing the three people, the devil shadow roared to the sky 8 times in a row. Each time it roared, it made Qi Jian and the other two tremble. Their heads seemed to be hit by a heavy hammer, and the roar kept echoing in their heads. After the 8 roars, Qi Jian and Wang Shuangjuan's eyes turned red, and their attacks were all affected and dissipated. Even a wisp of blood flowed from their mouths. Only Shenbai could still withstand his attacks, and he forced his willpower to resist the devil's sound that kept echoing in his mind. This move was the most psychic of the 9 moves of the capturer, 8 demonic sounds. If Chu Xiu had not gathered such a powerful devil chi through the demon gathering formation, which could offset a part of the psychic power consumed, Chu Xiu would not have dared to use this kind of martial art. Taking a step forward, Chu Xiu slashed the demonic dance in his hand toward Wang Shuangjuan with extreme hatred. The surging devil chi gathered on the blade, and as the blade fell, the devil flame soared into the sky. This extremely hateful blade strike, coupled with the powerful power gathered by the demon gathering formation, directly smashed Wang Shuangjuan's blade momentum and sent him flying. At the same time, the human puppet appeared next to Qi Jian, opened its mouth, and released the evil hungry ghost incarnation to devour Qi Jian. Although the hungry ghost incarnation could not share the power brought by the demon gathering formation, it would not be a problem for it to temporarily entangle Qi Jian. At this moment, Shenbai's 10,000 swords returned to origin had already fallen, and the endless long swords and sword chi hidden in the void rushed toward Chu Xiu. The momentum climbed to the extreme, and it was even stronger than when Shenbai used all his strength to repel Qing Tingshan and Eastern Qi Alliance. He fought with Qing Tingshan just to make a name for himself, but now he was fighting with his life against Chu Xiu. In the face of the dense and howling sword chi, Chu Xiu just casually stretched out a finger, and in an instant, an endless amount of devil chi was sucked into this finger. It seemed to be a light point, but like ink falling into a glass, the black color began to spread. Divine finger of divine retribution. The power of this finger originally only carried the aura of death, but with the help of the boundless devil chi, it seemed to condense all the negative forces into one body. Breaking through the surface with a single point, the black in the void spread like a halo. Wherever it passed, whether it was sword chi or long swords, everything was melted and destroyed. In the end, Shenbai only had one sword on him, and that was the white rainbow that his master had left for him. Qi Jian was fighting with the hungry ghost incarnation, but at the same time he felt that something was wrong. The development of things seemed to be beyond his expectations. Chu Xiu's explosive power was too amazing, so amazing that he could still control such a majestic devil chi and evil chi into his body, and find a way to consume it. If this continued, before they could exhaust Chu Xiu to death, Chu Xiu would first use the demon gathering formation to kill them, and then take the initiative to disperse the formation. Although they would suffer a certain degree of backlash, it would definitely be able to save their lives. Qi Jian shouted at the people below, "Stop fighting with the others, attack with all your strength and deal with Chu Xiu." Originally, their plan was to have some people stop Chu Xiu, and the others deal with Chu Xiu's subordinates, striving to kill all of Chu Xiu's subordinates, and then finally gather their strength to deal with Chu Xiu together. But now it seemed that the situation had changed and the three of them could not stop Chu Xiu. They naturally saw the situation on Qi Jian's side. Cheng Tingshan no longer besieged Chu Wuji with Shi Yunzi, and immediately attacked Chu Xiu with his sword. When Luo Junyan saw this scene, he immediately used all his strength to repel Luo Feiheng. If it was not for Shui Wuxiang and Yan Qixiao's protection, she would have been seriously injured by the Luo clan's patriarch. After all, Luo Junyan was a martial Dao Grand Master, and Luo Feiheng had just stepped into this realm. No matter how strong she was, there was still a gap between her and Luo Junyan. Most importantly, Luo Junyan was the Luo clan's patriarch, and he had cultivated the Luo clan's martial arts all his life. In terms of familiarity, he was definitely more familiar than Luo Feiheng, and he could suppress her. Seeing that Luo Junyan was going to besiege Chu Xiu, Luo Feiheng gritted her teeth and was about to rush forward again, but at this time Chu Xiu's voice rang in her ears, "Don't do it, I'm confident." Luo Feiheng hesitantly looked at Chu Xiu, who was besieged by 4 martial Dao Grand Masters, and Shen Bai, who was not inferior to a martial Dao Grand Master. "You're already in this state and you still have confidence?" But since Chu Xiu said so, Luo Feiheng did not continue to attack. Instead, she turned to attack the other martial artists. Luo Feiheng was much weaker than a martial Dao Grand Master, but among martial artists of the same level, unless they were the top 10 on the Longhu list, Luo Feiheng was really not afraid of anyone. When Lu Fengxian saw this scene, he also wanted to immediately get rid of Xiahou Zhen to support Chu Xiu, but he was tightly entangled by Xiahou Zhen and could not get away. Lu Fengxian was strong enough, and he also had the unparalleled divine weapon with him. Ordinary martial Dao Grand Masters might not be his match. But now, his opponent was Xiahou Zhen, who was on the Fengyan list. It was basically impossible for Lu Fengxian to defeat Xiahou Zhen in a short time, so he could only watch Chu Xiu being besieged. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.